All right. Good evening, everyone, to all the people in posterity. This is Connor from Counterpoints, Counterpoints 40K, and Counterfire, and all those channels. And then also the acclaimed Brianna Wu. We're going live to review some Destiny drama today. So, how are you, Brianna? How's
Oh my
life?
God, my Twitter is melting down, dude.
When is it not?
But it's super melting down today. So did you see this? I went on Richard Hania's podcast yesterday, and the whole reason I went on here is I wanted to argue for trans healthcare. So I thought it would be really smart to go into a right-wing space and give a different opinion about all of this. And of course, what is happening? Oh my God, you're talking to a Republican. They're white supremacists. They're fascists. They are evil. And it's just melting down. It's just like crazy town. It's making me
Yeah,
crazy.
don't you know better? Shouldn't you be in your fortress arc? Shouldn't you be just standing by and just only talking to people inside your hug box? That way you only get your perspective only ever. Which, by the way, that actually sounds kind of appealing sometimes when like there's a whole bunch of people all up in your face like talking shit. Like sometimes it sounds great to go back into the hug box, but I just don't think it's good for society.
So where do you fall on the Sydney Sweeney boobs debate? Do you think that wokeness is dead?
Yeah,
You
I think
do?
Sydney Sweeney's boobs are saving civilization. That's
You think so? Do you really
no.
think so? Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no. Like, listen, for if we're playing into memes, if we're joking a little bit, Sydney Sweeney, for those of you who don't know, she's A-list, B-list actress with very large cans who has had a couple of good roles. And the thing about it is like
What
the
were those
white.
good roles, Connor? Was that Madam Web? Were you a big
I
fan
think it
of
was
that?
Euphoria, and that's pretty much it. I think that's the only one. I've told my wife, she agrees with my assessment that she looks like she should be
Yes.
the sorority girl with a dark past, and that's it. And she's typecast into that role. And unfortunately, I think she did a rom-com recently. I'm not sure
Yes.
how well that did, but the rom-com, it looked,
Yes.
yeah, it looked like basically they had a very handsome man and they have Sydney Sweeney, who's
Yep.
objectively an attractive person, and it looked like two planks of wood talking to each other. So there wasn't much chemistry. So I don't
Okay,
know.
but
I hope.
she also did what was the name of it? Immaculate, which was it was like I don't want to say anti-Catholic, but it had a lot to say about sexual abuse, right? So
Okay.
she did that, and she did Madam Web. And it's like Madam Web had a lot, like, I'm not gonna tell you it's a good movie, but it had a lot of feminist overtones for it, which I enjoyed. So I don't know.
Well, some people. Well, so I watched because it's easier to watch people hate on things on the internet than it is to actually get off your duff and go to a movie theater to see a program.
Yeah.
So I saw like a Madam Web breakdown, and they actually showed how the audio wasn't lining up with the video itself, and so
Mhm.
they thought that there was like a whole bunch of reshoots and a whole bunch of confusion over the plot and where it should go and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things they said was that the most interesting part of Madam Web was shooting Spider-Man as if he was a horror antagonist, which that actually sounded interesting to me. Like
Yeah.
Spider-Man being a horror antagonist. Like if Spider-Man was trying to kill you, that'd be fucking terrifying. You're just
Yeah.
like walking outside and some
Yeah.
dude like throws like a titanium web around you and flings you into traffic. That's horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a good movie, but it had a good premise underneath it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like this. So this is the other thing
I do want to address Sydney
go for
Sweeney's
it.
boobs in a second.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I
Oh,
know it's a very important topic. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think that the great white replacement people who think that immigration is killing us all, that I think that they think that if you put a blonde woman with huge cans on Hollywood, then that's like an indication that culture is going in their direction. I
Mhm.
don't think that's true. And on top of that, this is where we have like this really weird conflict on the right wing between social conservatives who want modesty no matter who is portraying it, and kind of like the Coomer gamer bros who are under 40 who think that like social justice warrior anti-sexual tropes are actually what's like strangling American culture.
Sure.
And so it's an interesting conflict.
No, I agree with that. I mean, it's from my point of view, I'm a sex positive feminist, and
Mm.
yeah, I don't think you can have sexual liberation and women's liberation without at least giving women the option to like express sexuality freely. Now, I think there's a second discussion to be had because I wouldn't say it's gone too far, but I think that some women are making choices without really, really thinking through those choices, right? Like the number of young women doing OnlyFans is truly astonishing. Right. When I was debating John Doyle a few months ago, one of the people was asking me how I felt about that. And I would definitely not encourage a young woman to go and, do OnlyFans. I think it's going to limit you for your career. So I think that we're going too far with some of this, but like just in the aggregate, it's like a 30,000 foot view. Do you have an issue with some woman with big boobs like existing in popular culture? Of course not. I think it's feminist to allow women to exist in all kinds of shapes and sizes, right? So that's kind of my approach to it.
Yeah. Well, I typed it in chat being a smart aleck, but, you're a sex positive feminist. I'm a sex negative misogynist. We balance each other out. So yeah. So let's get into the topics. That way people don't feel like we're titillating them.
We're not done. We're not done because I want to talk about the other part of this. So yeah, I was getting yelled at by this. The other part of this was, it's like as far as trans people. I mean, how it's trans people are under attack. Healthcare is under attack. And I really want to push back on this idea that you're purer if you don't go into these spaces and talk about it. And to be good faith to the other side, they consider Richard Hanania to be a white supremacist. And I understand he's written some stuff that was really extreme earlier in his career, but he himself has condemned that, right? And I think if you go and look at his Twitter today, he says some unkind things about Black leaders, but in my estimation, it doesn't cross a line. So kind of like, what are we supposed to do there? Like, are we supposed to pretend people are never people again, or they can't like apologize and move forward? I don't believe in that. What's kind of your vibe on that?
No, even if that were the case, I think one of the most powerful things you can do, because after all, I'm like a capital L liberal philosophically, is that I think one of the most powerful things you can do as somebody that is hated is be in the presence of your enemies and be comfortable. Yeah. And the reason why is because oftentimes when you're comfortable, you're having a normal conversation, normal debate, you're bringing up your points in good faith, you're listening to the other side, you're engaging with them, you're articulating to them. Can you just put it in the fridge or something? The dinner was running a little late today. So, no. But when you do those kinds of things, and then you're not the stereotypes of what they expect out of the demographic, all the self-reinforcing stereotypes of what they expect you to be, that can humanize you to a healthy chunk of the audience. So are you always going to deal with like the vitriolic, hateful people who they hate your demographic for whatever theological or racial reason? Yeah, those people are still going to exist, but you're going to chip away. You're going to chip away a few. And that's chipping away those few eventually moves mountains.
So the other thing, I fully agree with that. The other thing I get really a lot of people angry at, do you know who Hunter Schafer is by chance?
Did you post a Hunter Schafer appreciation thread? Is that
okay? Can we put this here? Let me DM.
Let's just put the pretty trans gal. Is she also from Euphoria, or is she from something else?
She is from Euphoria, believe it or not. So, hold on, let me give.
Do I need to show the audience?
Put it on screen. We should. Well, we should put the evidence out there for this.
Okay, just in case. On
screen, yes. Okay. So look. He is so famous for wanting beautiful women, and I'm like, okay, if I'm trying to convince him that minors should have access to healthcare,
yes. Hold on, let me share that way. The audience isn't left behind. Let me come back. Where are you? You're over here, and then I need to change this.
We're gonna learn it really soon, y'all. We got the pipeline down.
Hold on, let me stop this one. Let me present this one. Well, and even then, I think people just need to be patient with me clicking through things, because honestly, it does take a second to set up. All right, and then add to stage. There we go. All right, so this is
Come on. So he's famous for loving beautiful women, and
Are
it's
we
like
talking about
I'm
Richard
trying to
Hania?
Hania, yes. So
Yeah.
I'm like, look, here you go. Is this a convincing argument that basically trans women deserve access to health care? I think it's a compelling argument. So
Well, this is a trans. This actually brings up something that was going on Twitter today. I was arguing with some random spurgs. We should also maybe mention Queeman in a second and what we're planning on doing with that. But with the random Twitter spurgs, they were like, "Oh, this is a background DM between Brianna and I think it was Jesse Gender,
word.
where you're like, I think you said like." At the end of the day, I think we want the same things, but I have to be optical. I have to go through electoral stuff. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I think something like you're being counterproductive. It was something
Yeah,
along those lines, right? And
yeah.
then Jesse Gender is like, well, we might have the same mission, but we have different ways in attacking it. And I don't appreciate the way that you're coming after me, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question to you, just so we can answer that for this random Twitter spurg, can you break down what you think should be available to minors and how? I think we did this on the last show.
We did. We talked about
Um,
this so much. It was insane.
well, yeah. So, I mean, can you do like the 20-second summary? Because I feel like I can summarize your perspective, but I think they'd rather hear it in your words.
Sure. I think that some minors would be well served by transition. I think we need very, very high standards to get there, and the entire system needs to be rethought because it's not serving people particularly well. I think at the end of the day, ultimately, it's almost a libertarian argument that the government doesn't have a right to come in and decide what health care you can give for your children, right? So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Well, then to press a little bit, then what would be the high standards that you would implement?
So there are, if you do look at the DSM-5, there are a bunch of criteria about what you have to meet to have gender dysphoria. It's not particularly high, and the truth is, right now, children that are getting access to hormones underage are not always meeting even those standards. So I think making sure you're going for cases that really, really, really clearly indicate that it's like that this is someone that's going to grow up to be transsexual. I think that's when you do it. If it's someone that has more typical like just discomfort with gender or ambiguity or like wanting to create their own gender, I think that's when you need to have a lot more skepticism.
Okay. Yeah, and you, if I understand, somebody was asking what your previous argument was. So if Richard Hania is famous for liking beautiful women, and so as a result, you wanted to show them Miss Schaefer, and since she's like a passoid and a babe in some regards, you were hoping that that would change his mind in reference to allowing people to transition.
It was
that the
honestly
argument?
just a joke. It was honestly
Yeah.
just a joke. I mean, God, I did a Twitter space with Taff last night, and she was talking about like, remember when leftists were
Wait,
fun?
Taftosh?
Yeah, it was like, remember when
Well,
leftists were fun and silly?
my chat, those of them who know Taftosh is actually what makes them question their super straightness. So
She's
like
very pretty. She's very
like
pretty.
I had some dissident right folk who were like, listen, I'm a super straighter, I would never date a trans gal, blah 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 blah, but Taftosh is something else.
I mean, she's beautiful and she's smart. So there it is. Anyway, I don't want to do another show on trans shit. So let's move on to some fun stuff.
Okay, cool. Well, that's actually interesting that you call it fun stuff. Let me end this one real quick. Let me exit out of there. Let me move to Destiny. And then just doing a little bit of framing while I'm getting this set up. With Destiny, he is all over the place. And I think that even if you hate him, you kind of have to appreciate his competence in getting into so many spaces so quickly. There was actually even a drama. I think it was the Keffel's Manifesto. He wrote the Keffel's Manifesto, and when he was done with that, there was this like 10-second clip where he was like, I got done with the Keffel's Manifesto, and I asked myself, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I in Twitch and YouTube politics, like arguing with all these 30 viewer Andy Spurgs? Hi, that's me. How big can I grow? And he took that really seriously for like a year. And as a result, he just jumped on every single podcast, talked to every single person that he can. And now I would say that he's like scratching at the stratosphere of what's possible for an internet personality.
I agree.
So yeah, do you have any insight into that? Just because it's interesting to me that he was able to like basically rocket his growth just off of clout.
Well, I think this is a trap I find myself in right now as well, right? It's like so much of this leftist drama is just eating away my attention. What are the important hits that I'm doing lately? Like trigonometry, infinitely more important. So I think that, I think that there's a lot of attention being paid right now to debates. I think normies are deciding it's exciting, which is why Piers Morgan, his new show, is doing so well. So I think people that can in good faith go into these spaces and really argue their points aggressively in an entertaining way, I think there's just a huge market for that. Whereas, leftist scolding, I think there's just a limit to how much people want to follow that bullshit. It's my own side. I don't give a shit anymore. So
I know, but see, this is what makes me furious and jealous is I felt like I was in the trenches of Twitch and YouTube politics for like 2 years. I was on every Reverie Prime Kai panel. I was on every hippy dippy that existed. I was, fighting people, debating people, DMs, et cetera, et cetera. And then Piers Morgan comes in and steals our fucking formula.
He did. And your people, our people, 100%.
I was like, this is a Twitch politics panel. That's all this is. Like, as I'm watching, Destiny and Hassan yell at random journalists, I'm like, this is just Twitch politics. That's all this is. It's fancy Twitch politics.
Connor, keep partying with me. We'll do some big media together. Okay. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be.
We'll get into the Piers Morgan stratosphere and we'll yell at some journalists up there. That sounds great.
Hold on. Stay tuned for some news on that. So
excellent. Well, then, in reference to what we're about to start watching, most of this is probably just going to be the clip. I don't know if I want to watch the entire thing of this, but we can just watch it and see if it gets interesting. I was more interested in Destiny debating Trump's deputy assistant, whatever, but I think I wanted to talk more about this situation because it's insane to me. So let's give the people some context before we start yapping about it.
So easy it would solve all of our problems. We would have socialism at this point if someone just went out of their way and it would be so easy. This is what happens when you don't kill every single slave owner after slavery. That's what you get. You should totally be allowed to call it violence against Destiny.
Now, right now, it's only online stuff, which is fine. It's not really fine. It's actually fucked up. I need to say that more.
Sean the Black, now the newest victim of the group of individuals that is very upset.
I like this too. He's the victim after giving a pros list for why I should be assassinated.
Is on site. I would like him to come to TwitchCon and we'll see what happens. I could afford all the lawyers.
Hassan is always good at picking out the worst criticism, like the easiest to respond to, and then responding to that in a way that doesn't address the central criticism at all. What is this? People say this word is as bad as the N-word. Who? Where? Like one clip. Is there a single clip in the history of all the cracker discourse and all the cracker nigga discourse? Is there a single clip of somebody going, both these words are just as bad as each other? Or even implying that? You need...
Woo!
Woo! August is so good at what he does. He's crazy.
Yeah, I took some notes and I think all of that is hilarious. Do you want to lead us off?
Let's just get into it. Let's go. This whole thing is awesome.
Fine. Then for me, just articulating my perspective. So Twitch banned Destiny because he was having debates with people about trans people in sports. And I think he called some of the people that were being aggressive against him subhuman. He caught a ban for that. Twitch in the past has banned people for using the R slur, right? So we're banning for the R slur. You're catching 3-day, 7-day, 10-day, and permas off of being transphobic or being ableist. But when Sean the Black says, and I think it's literally Sean, SEANDABLACK, when he's saying that the world would be a better place and the left would have achieved socialism if they had murdered people like Destiny, I haven't heard any updates about him catching any kind of social media consequence as a result of this. That's my first point.
So it's 100% fair. And, what I think is so ironic about Destiny's position is, when he said that a few years ago, maybe it was a little bit taboo, but today, this is an utterly mainstream point. I myself believe this. I've said it publicly. I say it this weekend. It's just like poll after poll after poll after poll shows that Americans just think this is cheating. They're with trans people and serving in the military and go to school and all of this, and he's getting banned about it, and they won't reevaluate that. Meanwhile, you're literally issuing death threats across Twitter and encouraging your Twitter to kill somebody, your Twitch to kill somebody. It's just absolutely insane. It's hypocrisy.
Well, I'm probably going to get you in trouble because I'm going to agree with your Chud take, and then I'm going to expand it. So let's scale. I have something in the back of my brain at all times. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's what human beings need to thrive. Right? It's physical. It's physical well-being, so food, shelter, water. Right? It's security, so physical security, financial security. It's social, which means having relationships, developing relationships. It's ego, so pursuing your higher level goals, and it's self-actualization, which is becoming the best version of yourself. And these 5 steps are a psychological theory that basically says that people act in these ways in order to fully realize their humanity. And when they're being threatened at the lower tier, like the physical tier or the security tier, it's hard for them to focus on the tiers like the social or the ego or the self-actualization. And so for me, I'm thinking, what do trans people need in order to feel like fully actualized citizens of the United States? Well, they probably need all the rights that everybody else needs. They probably need food and shelter. They probably need the ability to pursue their social lives. And they probably need the ability in order to pursue their egotistical dreams and their self-actualization. These are all things that trans people, quote unquote, need. Competing at the upper elite tier of collegiate and Olympic sports is very low on the priority list for me for realizing trans rights. 100%. That feels like almost like a privilege. Do you think in 1865 or 1861, if Black people could get access to all of the civil rights and civil privileges of the United States of America, but they wouldn't be allowed to participate in sports, they wouldn't take that fucking deal in a heartbeat?
No, I think they would in 2 seconds. And I think this speaks to the larger, not just in trans circles. I think the entire left has a complete lack of an ability to do any kind of electoral calculus because it's not actually about accomplishing anything. It's all about branding and the illusion of this and what your personal values are.
Or just prioritization.
100%.
Or just prioritization. 100%. We can get you into the upper echelons of elite colleges after we establish that we're human beings deserving of basic rights. So yeah, let's read this real quick. Just curious, what do you think about the increasing focus of anti-feminism on the right? There was a debate on Tim Pool with Rachel Wilson and Just Pearly. Why do you think it's becoming increasingly mainstream? Because it's edgy and interesting, and we burned out on MRA. How many times? So this is actually something Sneeko said about 6 months to a year ago. He said, red pill is workout, up your sexual marketplace value. Don't be a cuck. Don't be a simp. That's the whole red pill. And we've been talking about it for 2 years. I'm ready to move on to something else. I think that the anti-feminism wing is just the new iteration of the red pill to keep it interesting. What do you think?
I agree with that. Well, first of all, I think that what is her name? Lauren Chen was on here. I've done Lauren Chen's show. I think she is really, really smart. I think she's a fantastic speaker. So I think it's just good content. And all respect to Pearl, I'm going to be doing her show pretty soon. I hope she doesn't see this clip because it could get me canceled. But I she's particularly good at her job of debating.
If her job is pissing everyone off, then sure, she pisses me off every day. Yeah, I literally. Oh God, sorry.
No, I'm just saying. If the New York Yankees are playing a T-ball league, that is entertaining to watch. So I think it's just good content to be really clear. Secondly, love you, Connor, but the right wing is kind of synonymous with a certain kind of misogyny, right? So I think that part of that is just expressing some truly held opinions. Yeah.
See, I miss classic Christian patriarchal misogyny where it was you didn't own your wife. She's not a slave.
Yeah.
She's not somebody who, who is supposed to worship your beck and whim. That is not Christian
Nope.
patriarchy. As far as I know, one of the primary sources for like the idealization of Christian marriage is like they will shed their flesh, two shall become one, and they will shed their flesh and their this, that, the other, and they'll become one thing. And if a man mistreats his woman, it's as if he's mistreating himself and all that kind of stuff. And so there's obviously like a hierarchy of like decision making where like the man is supposed to make like family level upper tier decisions, but at the same time there's an absolute call to like treat your wife as like a revered and sanctified part of not just society but yourself.
Yeah.
And so there is no way that you would ever derive from that specific teaching like you can cheat on your wife, you can do whatever you want, you're you're super valuable, or you should become super valuable so you can bang more women. You don't have to take care of your kids. You don't have to take care of your wife. If she's emotional, that's her fault. Women are just stupid. You would never be able to get that take out of that specific passage anyways.
I think if we looked at my marriage and your marriage at the end of the day, I really doubt there's that much that's functionally different between it, right? Like, I know you love your wife a lot, and I know your marriage is based on mutual respect, just like mine is, right? So,
and mutual disrespect as well. So it's like mixed in there.
There's no
mixed in
marriage
there
that doesn't have that. But
Yeah.
no, I agree with you. I mean, yeah, I got married in a church. It was very traditional, and talked to the pastor about wives submit to your husband. And, I think, I'm not that into that, but I think there are a lot of people, particularly traditional Christian people that do feel it's like the husband is the head of the household and he's kind of morally looking out for the family, and you need to lean on his judgment. And, if he's a good man, he's going to listen to his wife and his children. And
he's not supposed to be a tyrant.
That's right. But teams need a leader. Right. I think that the more liberal view of it is, more 50-50. And to be honest, that's more of what my marriage is. But I'm not going to begrudge someone that has a more, if you have a successful marriage, God bless, right? There are a lot of different ways to do it. There are a lot of really bad ways to do it. And, I'm not going to get into the business of telling someone if they want to have a more traditional structure to it, that they're wrong. That's silly. It's not even feminist.
Well, I think the way that we need to get back to, so, we went on a little bit of a red pill tangent, but I think the way that what we need to get back to, and we will eventually, because the truth is that all this advice sucks. Like all of it is terrible. It leads to bad relationships. It leads to dysfunctional young men. It leads to dysfunctional young women. So if you're really aggressively taking in red pill content, you're probably fucking up your life. But what I would say is that, sorry, somebody interrupted me with a really funny comment, is that we are going to return to a complementary understanding of relationships where, regardless of whether or not you're male or female, regardless of whether or not you're a man or a woman, what's really going to happen is that your flaws and your strengths should complement your partner, and you should work together towards shared goals. And that's 100%. All it is. And that's all it was 100 years ago. That's all it was 1,000 years ago. That's all it's going to be 10,000 years ago for domestic, long-term monogamous partnerships. So hold on real quick. Infallible Foul says, then quit pretending you are on the left and admit you're a neocon now, Brianna. That is fucking hilarious to me, because you take all the shit in the world for she's a conservative and she's a social conservative and she's a neo-Nazi fascist, and then meanwhile people are like, you're not even conservative, you're a piece of shit, you're a fucking SJW lib cuck soy boy. And it's like, bro, we can't win with fucking anybody, it's very frustrating. Yeah.
It's frustrating. I don't think I'm a neocon at all. I seem to remember protesting neocon ideology a lot in the Bush years, but make your own assessment. So I don't care. I think some behavior is, this is a wider topic, Connor. I hope as we do the show, we can get into this, but I've really been thinking a lot lately about how there are not good examples out there for young people about a path to success. And I think that's true in your relationships as well. there's been a ton of content online lately about like young women really struggling with, to find a relationship and to find a partner. And I do think these dating apps are probably making it a million times worse than it was when, I was dating, I'm sure for you. And I think that people are really having a hard time connecting with each other. And I don't know. I think that, having an adult discussion about what is the true cost of hookup culture to your long-term development, I think that's a conversation worth having. I think this polyamory stuff, if you want to be polyamorous, God bless, that's your own life. I think talking about what that's likely to do with your relationships, if it's open, I think that's a discussion worth having. So I think what has happened is we've gone so far in this direction of saying, look, we don't need to be as stringent as it was in like the 50s, and that's true. But I think we've gone the other way of like glorifying not chaos, but like non-traditional relationship structures just for the sake of it. And I think a result of that is more lonely than ever before.
I'll tell you there's a catch here, and then I think we should kind of mosey on back to death threats, but I do want to touch this because I think it's interesting. So I think part of a good relationship is maintaining a level of intimacy with your partner. Yeah. And so putting it on public stage for public consumption and public criticism is actually kind of unnerving to a lot of relationships. So I think a lot of people who really have like healthy, happy relationships or whatever, they always try to balance how public and private it is. Yeah. So like one of the problems with being like, I'm a good example, like, so I could say that now. I care about my wife. I love my wife. I don't beat my wife. I pay a shitload of bills. I try to make sure that she's taken care of, the kids are taken care of, all that kind of stuff. Decade from now, 2 decades now, from 3 decades from now, my wife and I are going to earnestly work in order to be together forever. But God forbid, you're here in your 20s or your 30s and you're like, I figured it all out. And then in your 40s or 50s, it all falls apart. Everybody's going to call you an asshole. Yeah. And so I think that's part of the fear from people who do feel like they're doing it right, is they don't want to trip up in public, even if it's much needed advice. But yeah, so I'm definitely down for that content.
I could talk for 3 hours about marriage. I think it's so important, but we should talk about destiny because that's the title of the name of the thing.
Sure. So getting back into the content, the second part, we talked about how Shonda Black hasn't caught any kind of consequence for this. People were catching consequences for substantively smaller things in the past. The other thing was Hassan sweeping. I think this is an appropriate use of the term sweeping. And, Shonda Black is another victim of the people who like to get very upset, basically just calling out DGG. This is bullshit to me. And I think that if you say that the world would be a better place if this content creator was dead, then you should expect that community to respond, and you should expect that creator to respond, especially if they're larger than you.
This really upset me, Connor, to be really honest with you. Hassan liked a tweet the other day calling for my death. And I work with Cenk.
What the fuck, bro?
Cenk is truly one of my best friends. I care a lot about him. There have been so many times I've had a bad day and I've called Cenk up for career advice, and he's been there for me. And to be really honest, I've been very, very hands off with Hassan publicly out of respect for Cenk. And to see him liking tweets calling for my violent murder, I think it belies a lack of integrity. And I just want to remind people, just the other day, he had a stream where he was going after my interracial marriage and suggesting that, I married my husband to get a pass the same way that some porn star that, effed a bunch of black guys gets to use the N-word. And that was my thinking process behind it, which is just the most bizarre comment I've ever heard in my life. So I think To be fair, I think that because I put out misinformation onto the internet, I was being a little cheeky. I took a quote from Hassan out of context, and I put that he was saying that Riley Reid released a hip hop song, for those of you who know Riley Reid is, and she used the N-word repeatedly during that song. And then her defender said that she had been with so many black men that she gets the pass. That was the joke. Hassan was saying that that was not true. But I think it's funny to shitpost in that direction. So I actually took a quote from Hassan and I used it in that way. But the thing is, like, I think it is
freakish and disgusting when people insinuate that people's relationships aren't genuine or earnest, and you had like a 30-year motivation in order to be able to get slurs for like slur pass for Asian slurs that you don't even use. Like, I haven't heard you say any Asian slurs yet, so you're like wasting.
I don't even know Asian slurs. What are they?
I know some, but
Okay. Can you share that for me?
no,
so
I
then
don't
we
want
can
to.
Really,
Yeah, we can.
Just text it to me later. So we can,
Okay, sounds great. Yeah. So so you're not even exercising your past. So if anything, you're wasting your tokenization of your husband. So it's actually, you're not doing a very good job.
It's like, God, can people just not understand? I married my husband because I love him. You've seen us hang out, Connor. Are we a good couple? Like, I think we're a really good couple. Yes.
There's a French phrase, for God forgive me, called joie de vivre. It's the joy of life, and Frank embodies that every time I see him. He seems
so
like
great.
he seems like a happy golden retriever, just running around having a good time.
Yeah.
And that's hard to find. A lot of people aren't doing so hot these days. So when you find somebody who's earnestly happy, it's refreshing.
That's exactly right.
So I want to move to the next point that I thought was pretty funny, which is Mike from PA, who I don't want to body shame, but he's a little bit bigger than the last time that I spoke with him. He was saying that he wants Destiny to come to TwitchCon so they can see what's what, because Mike from PA can currently afford more lawyers. I have lots of thoughts on that issue. Can you share yours?
I'm sorry. Could you say it one more time? I was reading chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, chat, so for free, you can like the stream. So go ahead and do that. That way we can, be more relevant in the algorithm. More people will join us. They will also have a good time with us. Liking is free. If you have money burning a hole in your pocket, you want to help donate to us. We're not necessarily a free venture. We do have an editor. We need to pay him. And of course, we want the show to be successful eventually, and that involves money. So if you have some, please donate. If you don't have money, don't worry about it.
Connor has 0 Porsches. That's not fair.
I have zero. I do have a bolter, but I have zero used. It needs to be reminded. I need to defend you while not defending you. You bought your Porsche used.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So she
I
didn't buy a 200,000. She didn't pull a Hassan and buy a $200,000 supercar. She bought a $30,000 or $50,000 car.
So my favorite one is my 1986 Targa Carrera 3.2. This was trashed. I had to rebuild the transmission. I spent 3 months in my garage rebuilding the electrical system. I had to rebuild the headers in it. I took apart the entire air conditioner system and rebuilt that. I've done so much work on this car myself, because I enjoy that stuff. I didn't pull a Hassan. I actually grew up in Mississippi and enjoyed doing this stuff. So when I drive my 1986 Carrera Targa down the street, I feel super pimped out because I actually made that thing run.
Which is good. It's still an expensive habit, but we didn't pull a Hassan.
I could
now moving to Mike from PA
and make money. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's move to Mike from PA. Yes. So Mike from PA is he is a lefty streamer. People call him Hassan Waiting Room. I think that's pretty funny and accurate. And also he has fully indulged in the streamer lifestyle. If you are a heavy king in chat, don't worry about it. I'm not trying to fat shame you or whatever, but I think that Mike has honestly gained probably 150 to 200 pounds since I last talked to him 2 or 3 years ago. He is a large fella. And he is saying that he hopes that Destiny comes to TwitchCon. That way they can scrap. And he is saying that he can afford lawyers. So for me, if I was making physical threats against another person, I would be doing cardio. That is my perspective.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Well, I think it's really gauche. For starters, I think Twitch should crack down on all of this, right? I think we've seen right-wing streamers canceled and have their contracts canceled for a lot less. I think if the rules apply to one side, they've got to apply to everyone. And I don't think you should be issuing death threats. Now, I want to be really clear. I've talked about this in the past. I got into a Jesse single it was a couple of years ago, right? He emailed me. It was a huge misunderstanding. We went back and forth. And one of the things that led to that is I replied to him in a tweet that read one way. I could see how you could read it as a threat against him. I apologize for that. It was certainly not my intent, but I can see how he would feel that way. So I think that sometimes people can be clumsy and can word things.
This isn't clumsy though. This is I am going to fist fight you at TwitchCon, and I can afford lawyers. And the other one is world.
I agree. Yes.
Well, and not just that. We had to listen, and I say we as centrists and conservatives and rightoids and liberals, we had to listen for 2 to 3 years about the virtues of stochastic terrorism, which is basically not openly calling for violence, but leading your audience up to the precipice of violence and then letting them kind of like, make the next jump. And so Tucker Carlson, Lauren Southern, Stefan Molyneux, a whole bunch of creators, right-wing creators, were accused of using race realism as stochastic terrorist propaganda in order to encourage right-wingers to engage in a racist terrorist attacks. And so if that logic applies, then it has to be inverted into the lefty sphere. But then we get the lefty sphere, Giga Chad memes where they're just like, well, we're attacking the bad people, so it's okay that we're advocating for murder. That's what we get.
No, I fully agree. These are not like comments that are being misconstrued. It's just death threats. And I think you're exactly right with the stochastic terrorism comment. Either it's wrong for everyone or it's wrong for no one. Pick a side on that. I want to see people banned. I'm literally shocked that Sean the Black has not been banned yet. It's just
even a suspension.
Wrong. That's
even a suspension, like one or 2 days, just, hey, you did something bad, smack on the wrist or something like that. Even that would be a better response than no response. But so far we've got no response.
100%.
So question for you. Do you want to react to this content? I was personally more excited. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
We'll watch 5 minutes of it and then we'll go to the other.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other one is probably going to be the main event, but let's get our appetizer in.
To go on a positive community arc where you debate right-wingers again in the culture war before normies constantly associate you with hostility. I mean, that's still hostile. I do think it's pretty important to separate myself away from some of these people, though. Like, I don't mind drawing strong distinctions between me and some of these other like progressives online. Like, I think it's important to make that distinction.
I agree.
Not even a virtue signal to like other like right-leaning people that I'm not like insane, but even just to my own audience to make sure they don't go insane. And for like center-left people that are looking for non-insane people to follow. A lot of the messages that I get from people that watch me, I feel like it's pretty evenly split between like, oh, I'm conservative and I still disagree with you a lot, but I watch you because I think you're whatever is interesting. And then there's a lot of people who are like, I used to watch Hassan a lot. Some like I used to watch Vosh, and now it's nice to see that there's like, or I felt like he was getting a little bit crazy, and it's nice that there's like another reasonable left-leaning person without having to go to like conservative or centrist types. Just as a quick thing, we're just going to timeline some stuff out. I should have worked on this off stream. Okay. Just so that we're all on the same page, okay? Because it's irritating how much stuff gets rewritten, okay? So here is the timeline of the recent crazy drama, all right? Okay. Ludwig, is The Yard Ludwig's podcast, or is it considered like all of their podcasts? Do you have any idea? Like The Yard.
I have no idea.
He left the podcast yesterday. Wait, really?
Well, I don't know if you wanted to pause something specific. We can keep going,
no.
but
let's actually fast forward like 10 minutes and really get into it.
Okay. The just a comment was that he was saying that he was happy that he was getting people who were coming out of Vosh and Hassan and all that stuff, and that he was happy that they were basically messaging him and saying like, oh, I found you through this, that, the other. I'm hoping that the extremist rhetoric and also the apologia for the extremist rhetoric is shedding off some of the people. To be honest, just to share from my perspective, I think Vosh can be a charismatic fella, but I would personally not want my children to consume his content. The reason why is because he's doomer. He puts everything in existential terms. He says that we're on the verge of a civil war. He says that his political opponents are monstrous. They're on the verge of committing all these acts of genocide. And so from my perspective, he's kind of doing the stochastic thing, but from the left, where he's so extreme that he's putting everybody into an existential crisis. And so I don't want my kids to do that. I want them to work out. I want them to get a girlfriend. I want them to get a job. I want them to improve themselves. And I want them to research things that are interesting to them. That's what I want them to do. So I'm hoping that as these far left pundits kind of shed off a few people who don't want to deal with their crazy stuff anymore, they do kind of move center, maybe to Destiny, maybe to us.
No, I think that's really well said. And I also think, like, something he said earlier in that clip, like, there's a lot of value in, like, going into these spaces and showing them non-crazy leftists. I think there's a ton of value in that, right? When I go into right-wing spaces, I really try to stress, like, national security. I try to stress loving the country. Yeah, I try to show that I'm like a normal person, because I think
Well, we have a relevant comment. Kino Tech USA says Brianna has been calling everyone who disagrees with her a Nazi since Gamergate. Is that true, Brianna? Have you been doing that?
I don't think I've called anyone Nazi. I don't know when I've ever done that, actually. So I don't.
So
think
we're
I do it
saying
on the regular.
source.
Yeah, I need to see
Source as a
some sources.
tweet or source as a video. This keeps happening to me as well. Whenever whenever I'm talking about you, there just be spurgs who come into my tweets or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, Brianna did this, Brianna did that," and I'm like, I talked to her about this. This was my understanding of her perspective. Do you have a contrary position? And they don't have anything. I'm not saying that you didn't say it. If they present me a clip or a tweet, I'll happily review it. But so far, it's basically been people inventing positions. Sultan Al Fahim says, Connor, but don't environmentalists tell people to not have kids? What about them? I think that encouraging people not to have children is different than actively like encouraging murder, but that would be my perspective. So we fast forwarded 10 minutes. Do you want to share anything before we get back into it?
Let's go.
5% of people feel good and are down for it. And like ultimately, regardless of what you think, that is not the situation here. So I personally donated 10K.
Oh no.
I think it is worthwhile. And if you guys got some extra bread, I would recommend you donate, but I won't throw it on you. You know what I mean? No thanks. And some people are gonna say that, you know what I mean? That's why it's the difference.
This is a cracker take.
Between like, hey, I can put my money where my mouth is, but I don't need to put your money there. I don't need to enter a fucking debate about whether that's worthwhile.
Take. Hey, I know Arabs are dying, but you know, I'm not gonna tell you to donate. Do whatever you want.
Well, this is why Ludwig does that. He just doesn't want to have any dry.
Also, be really careful. Frogan made a really big tactical slip here, although she probably doesn't know anything about any Middle Eastern history or anything whatsoever. But you probably shouldn't call Palestinians Arabs. That's the Israeli position, that they're all Arabs, they're all the same. You should probably exclusively refer to them as Palestinians. That gives them the strongest political and historical claim to that particular land. It was funny that she says Arabs are dying, unless maybe she's just trying to blow it out and make it sound like he only cares because it's brown people dying, maybe. But the brown people thing doesn't really work because over half the Jews in Israel now are from or Sephardic or whatever, from Middle Eastern country. But I don't know. It's just a stupid comment from her, but whatever.
Just want to start any trouble. She dumb. She's probably going to get suspended for this. She should get suspended for it.
Oh, hold on real quick. Can you clarify your understanding of the 50 Cent meme? Do you agree that the 50 Cent meme was not a cuck meme? No. It might not have been. Like, I think there's a world where it wasn't. But the thing is that Ludwig has thrown so much weird, underhanded shade at me before that my charitability for him is at absolutely nothing. If anything, for me to be a little bit charitable towards him, the fact that the only time he got involved in that conflict was like when he saw his name get mentioned, and he has so much smoke for me, but nothing to say when his partner is like calling me a fucking cock and he's done all this. Like, no, I have literally no charitability whatsoever for Ludwig. It's possible that he didn't mean it as like part of a cuck meme, although that is technically kind of where that that meme kind of comes from, but I don't give a fuck. But
yeah, I think, why don't we move on
like,
to the
I can pause.
debate?
Sorry.
Yeah, why don't we move on to the real debate here? This is going to be so scattershot over 2 hours.
And it's not only is it going to be scattershot, but we're basically going to have to jump from drama to drama to drama. And just for the people who might be like coming in and they're like, who the hell are these people and what are they talking about? So I'll try to be as brief as possible. Ludwig is Twitch aristocracy, meaning that he did very well on Twitch. He's upper echelons of the streamerverse. Him and Destiny got into beef on Twitter. They were arguing about it. Frogan is Hassan's mod and also a streamer. She said that when Ludwig donated $10,000 to like Palestinian relief, this was a cracker take because he wasn't willing to harness his audience in order to do additional fundraising. So the reason why that's relevant is because 2 years ago, cracker became a banned term on Twitch when it was used in like a derogatory and abrasive way in a racial context. And Twitch caught a lot of shit from progressives because they wanted the ability to use it. But then everybody else was like, okay, if you're going to use racially derogatory terms, then where's the line and why can't we use it for other racially derogatory terms? And that's kind of, at least for what you need to understand in order to understand that series of clips, that's all you really need.
I love it. Yeah, I kind of wish, God, I know it's too late to do this today, but I wish we had planned on doing Stardust Great Frogan video this week as long as she's on stream. I love that, and I almost want to do a second stream with you this week where we go over it because it was so good. Did you watch that by chance?
I haven't, but I would say that the comments were positive, and it seemed like Frogan was upset on Twitter, and it seemed like Stardust was getting some rallying support in replies and tweets and retweets and all that stuff.
I love it. I love it. She's terrible. I am not a fan at all.
Speaking of which, if you want to canvas with Progressive Victory in New York, then a lot of progressive streamers will be there. I don't have an exact itinerary, but chances are Miss Frogan and some other creators will be there. So if you're interested, then come to New York.
I love it.
All right, let's set this up real quick. So this is a Trump administrator. I want to get his name. It's Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
So
I know
you're in right-wing world. Explain to me who he is, because I know his voice. He has a very distinctive way of speaking, but I don't actually know what this guy does.
Well, see, and that's the interesting thing too, is that the last time that I heard about Dr. Sebastian, is it Gorka? I want to be correct. Yes, Gorka.
Yeah.
He was a part of the Twitter files. That was the only thing that I knew him from. Was he was saying that he was getting shadow banned as a result of being a prominent Republican figure that was unapologetically make America great again. So rather than taking a guess or looking up the Wikipedia, I can look up the Wikipedia while we're watching them. But I would rather watch the intros themselves.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go.
Come on.
No, this is important.
Give us the facts.
Because this is
an area where you can win. Give us the facts.
Garbage. There were no military operations in Crimea, in Ukraine, or on
Crimea
the border.
was captured. The whole thing is a military operation.
True. Correct. That is right. Notice how he doesn't counter what I'm saying. Wait, why do these guys touch each other so much?
Dang it. Is there a link to the original? I'll let this play while I look for like an original uninterrupted, because I don't want to do React Andy to his React Andy.
Okay, fair enough.
There's too much touching here. I'm uncomfortable with this.
Actually,
Even as a
I think
bisexual
I've
man,
got it,
the amount of
'cause I was
touching that's going on
listening
this
to
side of the table is driving
Okay.
me crazy, and it's making me uncomfortable. I should have wore a gayer shirt for this. Every single time this guy opens his mouth to respond to anything, there is no factual analysis. There is no substantive disagreement. It's just narrativizing and storytelling.
How do you not look at these three things and think, wow,
Where's the response to this? We should be talking about whether or not we think Donald Trump is a bigger.
Okay, we're going to watch the original, guys. I appreciate Destiny's passion, but we're here for our commentary of his debate, not necessarily his commentary of his debate. So let me exit this one. Let me open this one. All right, cool. Also, I don't want to get colored by Steven's analysis. So share, present, share screen for the explosive debate. Let's go.
Foreign policy, it was a disaster. I would
He's
look
out
that
of
up.
his depth. He's out of his depth.
Out of my depth? Okay.
The analysis is childlike to defend Trump, right?
Okay, can we stop? I don't like this shirt. I
love this shirt.
I don't. This is
It's
bad.
gay cowboy. It's perfect.
Bad.
It's perfect.
Did
Yeah,
Dan take him clothes shopping? I don't know what's going on here.
Listen, it's simultaneously hyper stylized, so that's kind of like feminine, metrosexual Persian guy from the middle thousands, but then also these kind of look like a cowboy-esque insignia, you know what I'm saying? So it's like Western, pseudo-conservative, I think it's very mixed. I think it's very centrist, very based.
Okay, so let's pick this apart. I think the beard looks good. That's got some drip. I think his hair looks good. It's curly. I think it needs to be like a little longer or a little shorter. This shirt is just not working. I'm sorry. Kyla, you need to go help him. Your friend is counting on you. Please help.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, chat is with you. And then chat, if the audio balance is off, it was a little loud for me, so just tell me if I need to bump it or if I need to lower it.
Do you think that, like, I mean, I know that when you get divorced, it makes like fashion more interesting. like my husband after he got divorced.
Is this him peacocking so he can attract some more 19-year-old young things? I don't know.
Well, Destiny does not need help with that. I think he's doing just fine with the ladies. But I'm saying, like, after my husband got divorced, that's when he got into his shorts all winter thing because he's like, who's going to stop me? So I don't know. I think let's try to get some. We'll try to get some fashion friends to hook up with Steven.
Yeah. So Ad Libitum says 60 people watching on YouTube and only 3 likes. Hit the button. Yeah, guys. If we're at 60 on YouTube and 20 on Twitch, and we have 3 likes on YouTube, that is crazy. It is free. It bumps it in the algorithm. It's easy. Go ahead, take a second, click on it. I'm not going to hit the button. You're going to hit the button.
You will hit the button.
Hit the button.
You will. Come on.
All right.
Do it for your country. Do it for America.
All right. Well, okay. Somebody says that they were lying. We're actually closer to 30. Okay, still bump it.
First, don't just come out of nowhere. There's a buildup for how these things happen.
So what he just did is he said the conditions for the largest slaughter of Jews since 1945 were created by President Trump.
A lot of the stuff that he did during his presidency was kind of a buildup to the frustrations that would obviously come out on October 7th and that horrible terrorist attack.
It's because nobody fears the senile old man in the White House who talks to dead people and thinks his wife is his sister. That's why the world is on fire.
Jesus.
That's probably a bad system if he thinks that.
The question I want to ask you is a question I can't ask you on YouTube, which is about January the 6th and everything that happened around that. Right. Do you believe the 2020 election was stolen?
So to say that he went along with the peaceful transfer of power is just a lie.
Well, he did because he
not
left
only
the White House.
Yes, after he failed to steal the election.
Gentlemen, welcome to the debate. Seb, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, we want to focus exclusively on the election that's upcoming. And one of the things we agreed before is that both of you get a chance to set out a positive case for your candidate, something that we never hear anymore because everyone just criticizes the other person. So given that Biden is the incumbent, Stephen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah.
Why is he good?
I think that Biden is a good president because I think that he's shown that he's willing to defend and strengthen our institutions. I think that the United States is only as strong as the institutions that we have. You can have parchment guarantees from constitutions that say you're afforded XYZ rights, or you're guaranteed in the United States to be able to do some particular things. But at the end of the day, if we don't have a government telling you that the food is safe, or this medicine is safe, or your car is not going to explode at the end of the day, I think that none of those things actually matter, the parchment guarantees. So I think that Biden has done a really good job at kind of reaffirming our institutions, whereas I feel like Trump was a bit more negative towards them. The second thing is I think Biden has done a really good job at being able to actually bring different people in Congress together to pass legislation. I think that bipartisanship is really important right now, considering how divided we are. You've got things that Trump said about infrastructure for 4 years that never got done. The closest we got to infrastructure building in the United States under Trump are tariffs, which are basically just taxes on our own citizens, whereas Biden was able to pass the IRA and the CHIPS Act, which both have fostered a ton of new manufacturing that's been happening in the United States, which I think is really cool because we're finally building stuff again. And then I think that the foreign policy under Biden, I think that our aims right now are a lot more noble than they were under Trump. I think that regardless of your feelings, our participation with supporting Ukraine against Russia or supporting Israel against the situation in the Middle East is a lot more defensible than endless drone wars that we're trying to hide in Yemen, fighting in Syria, whatever other, the photo opportunities with North Korea, the back and forth with Iran, whatever kind of mixed bag of undermining the United States Trump was involved in when it came to U.S. foreign policy under him. So those would be my 3 big ones. I think defensive institutions, ability to bipartisanly pass legislation, and then more noble foreign policy aims.
Perfect. I will come back to you to probe at some of those things. Seb, what's your case for Trump?
He loves America.
Can we pause it actually for a second? Really so what did you think of that, Connor? Do you agree with that assessment? Do you disagree?
I'm okay with it. I just think it's even as somebody who prefers Biden over Trump, it does feel a little anemic. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if you looked at Obama, you could summarize him relatively early, positive or negative. You could say he passed the ACA, killed Osama bin Laden, basically hope and change, and also oversaw an okay economic recovery, even though he did too much legislation, right? Or
How about
too much
hunting down and slaughtering ISIS? I think that's that's a
well, as a military person at the time, I felt like the power vacuum he created kind of created the way that ended up rolling out. So that was my frustrations. But on the back end, I mean, on the back end, he did some good work there.
Yeah.
But with Bush, you could also summarize and say like, oh, Bush, he 9/11 Iraq War. You could at least summarize his accomplishments, right? I think with Biden, it's kind of hard, and the reason why is because he oversaw us coming out of COVID. Even when the economy was doing better on a lot of metrics, inflation seemed to steal the air out of the room because people were, having a tough time getting by with increased cost of living. And then when you're talking about like strengthening institutions, I'm good with that, but it just feels kind of anemic for people who are not a part of those institutions and for whom those institutions, they feel like they failed. Infrastructure could be, but again, it feels kind of ethereal. And then really geopolitics, like international relations, I think is like the one thing that I actually feel is like solid. So what do you think that Biden has done that's like solid?
Well, I think the vaccine rollout, I think that gets an A++. I think people don't remember just how chaotic that was under, under Trump. I think it gave some structure to that. I think, I personally am more sympathetic to the bans that happened and to the mandates that happened. But I think just as far as stepping in, getting an adult to do the logistics, I think that was excellent. I think this, I think he's done a good job in putting together a coalition to push back on Ukraine, though I'm frustrated with the Republicans like sabotaging that. I think that the kind of restoring democratic norms, I got to be honest with you. I mean, I care about a lot of things, but there's no issue I care about more than democracy. And I think he's done a really good job at that. So I think you're really fair, though, to say there's not one thing you can point to say that's my president and what he's gotten done, because it's such a tenuous link to every single one of those things.
Yeah, and I just want to point that out as well. Somebody in chat is saying it, and Trump likes to take credit with like Operation Warp Speed. You know what I'm saying? So the vaccine rollout, the private incentivization, all that kind of stuff, he likes to take credit for it. Obviously, it was overseen by Biden, but that's something that it's kind of like a mixed thing. So the economic recovery was kind of a mixed thing. The vaccine rollout, kind of a mixed thing. Even with the border security, I think that Biden has been making a lot more noise about, making sure that the border is actually relatively secure and that we're not incentivizing people to take dangerous immigrant trips to the United States that actually end up hurting or killing people. And so, but that again is like a centrist thing. It's not a full left thing or a full right thing, because he's not particularly harsh on the border, but he's not particularly laissez-faire either.
Yeah.
And then Remy LeBeau for $7.99 says he asked who was going to pay for Destiny's trip to Israel. I said I was paying for it, and Remy LeBeau is chipping in for $8. He's helping sponsor the shill. The Julumni, in case you guys didn't catch it, the Julumni are sponsoring Destiny's trip to Israel.
That's almost, just to be really fair, Israel, I get paid a lot more for my Hasbara. They called me up. They're like, Brianna, we want to see this tweet justifying the genocide. And, I do what I got to do.
I have repeatedly tweeted at the Mossad and said my DMs are open, and they have yet to take me up on it. So I will let you know.
I will hook you up. You'll get your shekels. It's going to be a great time.
If you can talk to them at the next meeting, that would be great.
That Hasbara money is amazing. It's fantastic. I'm going to get a 5th Porsche with it. I'm probably going to get a GT3 this time around.
Okay. Jeez, don't scare away the normies who don't have supercars. Okay. Let's hear Sebastian Gorka's positive arguments for Trump. I am curious.
that simple. And he understands the institutions are either broken or corrupt. And he's not a member of the political elite. He wasn't in politics for 47 years like the current incumbent in the White House. He is not part of the quote-unquote political elite that clearly detests our nation and Judeo-Christian civilization. There's a reason that working-class Americans from across the nation voted for him in 2016. There's a reason that recently in Harlem, we saw what? We saw a black 10-year-old child chant out, "We love you, Trump," which was then picked up by all
That's
the
not
adults
argument. That's
around
not
that young
argument.
boy, because they've seen that man authenticity. He's not a machine career politician. He's not somebody with 21 shell companies funneling money from communist China, Russia, the Ukraine, into his son's dodgy dealings and then into the Biden family. He has authenticity and he loves America. The first time I met him, I've told this story on your show previously. I grew up in the UK. It was a very different culture for me to meet this reality TV star in his, golden tower in New York. But within 30 seconds of sitting down with this man, I realized two things. He loves America and he hates political correctness. That is the antithesis of the political class, whether it's rhino fake Republicans or the institutionalized Democrats. And that's why he's trouncing Biden in every significant poll in America. People see a man who understands America has lost its way. The elite on both sides of the aisle have betrayed especially American workers, and we need to fix it. That's why.
That was amazing. It was amazing, and it was nothing.
I don't. So
I have notes. I want to break down how beautiful it is, but please
you
go
first.
ahead.
You go first. You go first.
Okay. Trump loves America. So do I. That is, and arguably Biden, if you ask him, hey, Joe Biden, do you love America? He's gonna be like, with every fiber of my fucking being. Yeah. So number one, that is like the lamest fucking point. Institutions are corrupt. So he's actually taking the inverse of Destiny's argument, which I actually think is kind of interesting, because Destiny is saying that he loves Biden because he's been reinforcing American institutions, and Gorka is saying that he loves Trump for the opposite reason. He's undermining them. He's cutting them down. He knows they're corrupt and they're evil and this, that, the other. He says that our institutions hate the American people. That's actually something that's going to resonate with a lot of like working class civilians and also Republicans who feel like they're getting taxed too much.
I agree.
And the reason I think that this is particularly bitter after the war on terror. I think that 2 decades and trillions of dollars spent overseas and very little to show for it, and then kind of like crumbling infrastructure and taxes and a financial system that doesn't seem to benefit like the middle class or the working class, that hits really hard for people who are probably bitter about it. So he's tapping into that bitterness. A black 10. Well, sorry. Do you want to address that before we move on?
You make your points and then I'll make mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
A black 10-year-old was cheering for Trump. I'm sorry. That's not a fucking poll, you idiot. Like, I seriously, like, I wonder if this is like, is there something in politics rhetoric class where they tell you that people love anecdotes that have nothing to do with fucking reality? I really wonder if they coach politicians to say the dumbest anecdote you can possibly think of to reinforce your fucking position, because people love that shit. Because I hate that shit. I hear a 10-year-old in Harlem was cheering for Trump and I'm like, Trump's from fucking New York. Black people like nice things. They probably talked about how Trump was a hustler and he got shit done, and he dates all these beautiful women and he makes money and all that kind of shit. It has nothing to do with whether or not he's a competent leader. That's the dumbest shit ever. 21 shell companies shoveling money into the Biden family. Trump doesn't need that because he does that, relatively speaking, openly. He just takes money from fucking people. So, I don't like what Biden's family has done. I don't like the smokescreen around the Biden family, but I feel like that is another non-point. He's authentic and he loves America. He's repeating himself. He loves America and he hates political correctness. He's repeating himself, trouncing Biden in the polls. I know that there was some negative polling recently, but I don't think that is necessarily going to bear out throughout the year. And the elites have betrayed America. He repeats the same bitter pill out of the past 20 years. So that's my assessment. Go ahead.
So I think all of that, don't disagree with a single word of what you just said. I just want to say, as someone who has gone through Democratic media training twice now, most of what they teach you is how not to answer questions and to refocus on certain things. I've actually found I've very deliberately done the opposite in my career. I think if you don't hit things head on and talk to people directly, I think they think you're full of shit. So I've actually very consciously ignored Democratic politician media training. I want to come back to this point because I think you've really made out the negatives there. I think something here that's true and positive that I can say for Trump is that he really, really hates political correctness. And this is where, like, my opinion has changed in the last 10 years. If you went back to Brianna Wu during Gamergate, just being really honest, I was more towards, I was thinking about the time, like being more civil to people and, like, let's cut down on dead naming. Let's make this policy. Let's tighten this up. For whatever reason, conservatives really, 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 really freak out and really, really do not like it when you restrict what they can say. And, this free speech issue has caught on like wildfire, and there is a huge constituency for it. So do I think that, like, dead naming on Twitter is a more important policy than Ukraine? Of course not. But I think there's a constituency in the Republican Party that really, 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 really agrees with that, which is why I think it would be very smart for Democrats and liberals to really lean in and embrace liberalism, meaning let's discuss things, let's have open discussion. I think if someone is using slurs or some language, I think it's entirely appropriate to distance yourself from them and not interact with them. But I think we really need to get back to basics and appreciate free speech again.
Well, in what I love about recent dramas is that there are people, Mudahar, for instance, some ordinary gamers, Nicholas DiOrio as another example, even Chud Logic to some degree. So when you're talking about like transgendering, which like using the proper pronouns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when their chats are being like insistent, where they're like, no, you have to use he, him, or no, you have to use she, her, or whatever. The creators themselves are like, you're being annoying as fuck. And what I mean by that is the way that we like imagine social justice warriors being insistent that we have to use a certain kind of language. There's Puritans on the right who insist on using the opposite language, and it's just as fucking annoying. And I think most people are liberal or libertarian in that they want to self-police. And particularly if they like somebody, they don't want to be unnecessarily rude. And so as a result, you kind of have this, I would say, like de facto proper gendering of, let's say, people of like Blair White.
Yeah.
In conservative circles, she's properly gendered. And the reason why is because she looks like a girl. She's polite. Most people like her. As a result, they don't want to be fucking rude to her. And the people who are rude to her, they're the ones that are socially cast out because they're being freaks about it.
So we have a mutual friend of ours who is a very famous right-wing commentator, and she was talking to me about this the other day, like just how difficult it was because, and I think this to a certain extent is part of what's happened with fringe left spaces where you're so insistent on policing something and forcing people to feel like they need to interact in a certain way. And I think it's really had this counter-effective, this counterintuitive effect on it where people now feel if they go along with it, even if it feels like calling Blair White she, her is the most natural thing in the entire world. It's just like it would be very difficult to talk to her and say anything different. So I fully agree with that. But just getting back to the debate, I think that is a constituency that Trump has tapped into.
Excellent. All right, let's hear if we get into anything more substantive.
Really, is it
Gorka.
really true that like the Biden and the people around him hate America? I mean, isn't that an extraordinary claim to make, Sam?
It is. It's kind of perverse. But if you look at everything they've done for the last 3.5 years, answer the question thusly. What else would you do for 3.5 years if your ostensible goal was actually to destroy America? What would you do differently? Nothing. You'd open the
This
borders.
is so
you'd give billions
cringe.
of dollars to the greatest state-sponsored terrorism in the world, Iran, that every Friday chants death to America. You'd undermine our relationship with our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel. Stop sending them the weapons they need to save themselves from the bloodthirsty jihadists that kill more Jews than we've ever seen since the end of the show, at the end of the Holocaust. You'd make it harder for Americans to live their lives. When on the first day of the Biden administration, you ban the XL Keystone Pipeline extension. You say no more fracking, no more energy exploration on federal lands. And what do we have? We go from $1.80 a gallon of petrol to now we have in California $6. When you're a man who lives on how much it costs to put a full tank of gas in your car, if you're a worker, if you're a plumber, if you're a carpenter, you've crushed tens of millions of people. That is only possible if you hate the nation in which you live. Think of this thing. It's set up by one person. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Sebastian. Listen to Biden's former boss. 5 days before he became president, he said, we are going to fundamentally change this nation. I know you're a married man, Konstantin. Don't tell your wife you want to fundamentally change her because she won't believe you love her. You'll be on the couch or your
That's a good line. That's a good line.
Are you taking psychic damage? Because I'm taking psychic damage over here.
I
listen,
think he's making an argument that's actually pretty persuasive. I think people.
You
are
think
gonna
so?
agree with
Please
this.
walk us through that because his entire rhetorical game pisses me the fuck off. But please expand.
So I think going through this, with my job, I end up looking at a lot of different polls and things like this. He's running the Republican playbook and hitting Biden on inflation. This taps into a sentiment that is out there. Democrats do need an answer for, which is that nobody is, standing with them, and this inflation that's going on is corporate greed, and Democrats just are not serious about pushing back on it. That is a real sentiment. I can point you to polls showing we need messaging on this. So I think that's actually really smart. I think, obviously don't tell your wife you're fundamentally going to change your marriage. It's hyperbolic. He's taking every politician promises change. I'm sure there's some line where Biden said that. It's dishonest, but it's a good line. You've got to admit.
But here's where I would take this rhetoric and I would want to jam it right down his fucking throat. And Keto Tech, thank you for the $2. I'm honestly shocked how reasonable Brie has been. Well, she's based. That's why we're doing the show.
Crazy. Yeah.
So, but and by the way, thanks for the donos, guys. It's appreciated. If you have any money burning a hole in your pocket, do it. If you don't have any money, then go ahead and like the stream. Anything helps. And my dog is walking by my internet cable. I swear to God, if he hits it, I'm gonna be so mad. So anyways, the reason why this is so infuriating to me is because this cravat wearing motherfucker, I guarantee you that he makes more than $250,000 a year being whatever the fuck he is. I guarantee you he's putting some money in the bank. I guarantee you that he's doing quite well. And so him being I'm being an asshole, but how much could a banana cost, Michael? $7? That's the vibe that I'm getting off of this dude. And then simultaneous to that, he's talking about cost of living increases, real. He's talking about inflation, real. But you know what Republican policy on that would have been? Republican policy would have been no stimulus checks. So you're out of a job, tough shit, get back to work, go work during COVID. If you catch COVID and you die or you get injured, then fuck you. That would have been the number one Republican thing in order to avoid inflation. And then number two, it would have been when inflation hits, no reinforcement of any part of the market whatsoever. The market's going to sort itself out. As a result, we're just going to ride this wave. That would have been the entire Republican reaction. So and by the way, this is the other thing about inflation. People do think that it's just print money, no economic activity, inflation go higher. That is true. But part of the problems that we had during this cycle was, I want to say it wasn't just demand, it was supply side as well. It was basically we weren't producing enough things, and then we were having a shitload of people all needing those things. And part of that was just the natural consequence of COVID and interrupted trade. It didn't have anything to do with monetary policy. So Republicans acting like they had this shit on lock and key is bullshit.
Yeah. No, I think that's dead on. And but the truth is, these elections are won on perceptions, and I think I've been talking about this for a really long time. There is a perception that, again, I can point to public polling that Democrats. There's a feeling that Democrats stand for narrower and narrower identity issues and don't stand for working people. I don't think that's true in the actual policies that we're putting out there, but I think there's really a sentiment about that. And I think part of it is the way that the fringe left behaves online, talking about, just narrower and narrower things. So if I were in charge of the Democratic Party, one of the things I would do is really get us focused on talking about inflation. I'm sure for your family, Connor, I'm sure you've seen like shrinkflation going on, or the cost of gas going up, or the cost of food going up, and it really affecting your life, which is why people should donate to our stream. So,
Yes,
I mean,
inflation is hurting me. Help me buy another bolter. No, okay. So hold on. I want to joke, but I want to be serious too.
Yeah.
It absolutely hurt. And I know it probably hurt every single person in chat because we're probably all working class and middle class schmoes. That's why you're here. However, I was just really lucky that YouTube started doing okay, and that I love it, so I would do it anyways. And then I got a slightly better job, and that's all that happened. So while basically it started hurting really bad, I mean, I think we went from spending probably $500 to $700 a month on groceries for a family of 4 to spending $1,200 a month for groceries for a family of 4. You're literally talking about a 30 or 40% increase in the cost of living. And also we got hit by Hurricane Ian at the same time. They had to use gas backup generators in order to keep the power on during the hurricane. And so as a result, we got a huge bill that basically increased our power at the same time for we went from $300 a month, which it's Florida, there's air conditioning, whatever. We went from $300 to like $600. So we were talking about doubling on power. And basically we were looking around and we're like, I don't know how anybody who's working class is surviving at all.
Yep.
And I still sympathize, because if you're making $30,000 to $40,000 in this economy, that's probably the equivalent to making $20,000 in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I would guess.
I fully agree with that. So I just want to, before we go on, go back to this. Kino, this is a sentiment I see a lot. It may end up changing my mind on Bree, but girl, I remember your Gamergate tweet storm. It was rough. Dude, I was getting so many death threats. The fucking FBI got involved. Do you really think I was doing my best decision making when getting bricks thrown through my window? It's like, I have talked about this so much. I am embarrassed about a lot of the things I did during Gamergate. I don't regret standing up for women in the game industry being treated better, but there are so many things I would handle differently today. I am not the same woman I was 10 years ago. So maybe instead of going on some fuzzy memory of what I did 10 fucking years ago in the middle of a little international shitstorm, listen to this shit I've been saying for the last 4 fucking years on Twitch. It's dead consistent. I'm not.
He's trying to come your way, though. Thank you, Keto Tech. He's trying to come your way. And also, what I was going to say too is, listen, I am privileged in the fact that I was in public service for my 20s. So I would have tweeted so much cringe shit.
Yeah.
But I literally wanted to protect my job. So as a result, I did not do anything because I was in public service in law enforcement and the military. There are takes that I had a decade ago that I still think would be really funny shit posts, but they are not things I would defend. So yeah. Let's continue with Gorka. That way because honestly, I need to take more psychic damage in order to feel like we earn our donations tonight.
Let's go for it.
Doghouse, okay? You don't love that which you wish to fundamentally change, and that's what the left has become.
Well, there you go. I'm getting marital advice as well. Stephen, there's quite a lot there. I'm going to come back to some of the points you made in your opening and let Seb probe them as well. But there was a lot there. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with almost every part. I think that I don't think Trump loves America. I think it's pretty obvious that Trump loves himself. I think even Trump fans will admit that Trump is more in love with himself than any other individual entity that exists on this planet. I always think it's really funny. I think one of the most interesting things that happened with conservatives is this idea that they found a common man who's not a part of the elite to champion their causes, and it happens to be a billionaire real estate mogul from New York City that was essentially born with a silver spoon. I think that's incredibly interesting. When you talk about like, I mean, we could go into family stuff. I think it's interesting that people are so critical about Hunter Biden when Kushner is signing multi-billion-dollar deals with Saudi Arabia, when Kushner was working in
Hold on, but that's whataboutism, right? That's not like Hunter Biden could be a bad guy and Jared Kushner could be doing whatever you say he's doing. Those are not.
Sure, I'm not. It's not a whataboutism because it's not a defense of Hunter. I think it's more remarking that it's interesting what conservatives that are fans of Trump are selectively skeptical of. That if Biden had created a position for his son Hunter to work under, and then he had sent his son to go and negotiate on behalf of the United States, and then afterwards his son was signing multi-billion-dollar deals for companies that he worked with. This is like Burisma, but 100 million times worse because it's in the official capacity as a government worker while being related to a president who didn't divest.
I guess all I'm saying. Sorry to interject. I really want you to get the time, but I just that argument could be played the other way. If Donald Trump had a son like Hunter Biden who was doing what Hunter Biden did, everyone on the left would be outraged too, right? So
you could play many people on the left talking about Kushner that much, considering how crazy those deals are.
I mean, people have talked about it less. It's true.
Sure. Anyway, whereas for Hunter Biden, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene has pictures of him in Congress. I don't know if you saw that. In terms of like, what would you do if you wanted to make the country worse? I mean, I can think of several things. I would encourage my supporters to lead an insurrection on the Capitol. I would try to say that the election results weren't real. I would claim that the election was fake before even coming into office, which he did before his first term. I'd probably start to gain notoriety or popularity in the political world by suggesting that the current president was born in Kenya, not the United States. A lot of people forget, but that's how Trump initially picked up his popularity. It was with the birth certificate stuff with Barack Obama. I think that when you talk about like wanting to fundamentally change this country, I don't think Biden wants to do that. I think Biden genuinely loves the United States. I look at somebody like Donald Trump, who undermines basically every single part of this country, whether it's the legal and judicial system, whether it's trust in the voting process, whether it's NATO, whether it's U.S. Impressions or the U.S. reputation abroad. Yeah, I think that Trump fundamentally has no respect for any part of this country. That's why he suggests suspending the Constitution so that he could look for voter fraud. It's why before getting elected, he said that people that burn the flag are one of our most important First Amendment protected rights, should have their citizenship stripped.
Hold on, pause it there. Is burning the flag one of our most important First Amendment?
It's not. It sounds good. What he's really when you're in a debate and you're moving 10,000 times and you got 10,000 people watching you and you have somebody who's being smug across the table from you, you might phrase it weird. I think what he's saying is that it's, you know, if I was to interpret this charitably, it would be like, it is the most extreme extension of our First Amendment right, and it's part of what makes America America. Now, you can debate that. Like, borderline, when I open up Twitter, I think we should bring back blasphemy laws. So, like, I'm fucking, you know, I see way too many buttholes and penises and vaginas on my timeline. And that's because I follow for follow, which is a mistake.
It's all the porn. I get porn accounts that are just obsessed with my tweets. So if you want to see some porn, if you're making a long weekend of it, just log into the Brianna Wu Twitter.
Yeah, click on Brianna Wu Twitter, check
replies, and you'll see some super hot porn there. It's
but this is why Destiny is what he is, and this is why I'm not as good as what he does as I would like to be. So when I heard Sebastian Gorka say that I would do everything that Biden did if I wanted to destroy the United States, that is unbelievably fucking stupid from my perspective. You could break our alliances, not just with Israel, but with like Europe. You know, you could break with NATO, which is something that Trump has suggested he wanted to do. You could nuke ourselves. You could nuke other people. You could go to war. You could crash the economy. You could print more bills. There are 10,000 more things that you could do besides what Biden is doing if you actually hated the United States of America and you were in a position of power. So that is bullshit. So I would have taken that argumentative stance. But I like that Destiny played the Uno reverse card, and he's like, here's all the fucked up evil shit that Trump did that is borderline destroying our culture and our country. I think an argumentative instinct that is why he is who he is.
Yeah. So before we move on, I just want to hit this point by Brian right here. The moderator is a bit annoying. He called off several times. I know he's centrist, but he leans right. I don't know if it's been released yet. I did trigonometry the other day. I actually really, really like Constantine. He wrote a really interesting book called An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West. He gave me a signed copy. And, he comes from the perspective of having grown up in Russia and immigrating to the West and really, really appreciating in a way that we take for granted, access to things like food at the supermarket and the ability to criticize your government and open elections and those kinds of things. And, he has a fairly dismal assessment of several things that, threaten the West and his views. So I hear what you're saying, Brian, because I do think he generally leans more right even in ways he's not aware of. But I think he's at his core, he's a really good person. He asks smart questions. He tries to bring in people that he disagrees with. And his agenda really is more than right versus left. It's about Western values, meaning democracy, liberalism, meaning open speech, all these things. And I think that's actually a good mission. And I respect.
But I have a frustration. So Dylan Burns is, in my estimation, if I was going to host a professional style debate or any kind of debate, I would invite Dylan Burns. And the reason being is because he was so good during Hippy Dippy, where he would hear the dumbest arguments that you'd ever heard in your entire life, that like everyone in the room is taking psychic damage, and he did not interject. He took, he let the person finish their point to the best of their ability, and then he moved it on to the next person. And I feel like the best conversations and the best moderators are run by moderators who you do not know their opinion until the end of the show, where they actually articulate their opinion. And the reason why is because they are just there to facilitate the conversation between the two combatants. And so right there, you have, he's like, isn't that a whataboutism? Well, okay, whataboutism is an argumentative strategy that can be used in a bad faith way. But is he going to turn around and like go to Sebastian Gorka when he says some wild shit next, and he's going to be like, that's a non sequitur? Like, is he going to like keep a decent standard of calling out, quote unquote, broken rules of debate? And my very strong instinct is no. Destiny is going to say things that he disagrees with, and he's going to feel the need to interject.
I think that's fair.
All right, let's do it.
And I would also probably try to undermine the current sitting president and the current sitting Congress by telling them that they're not allowed to get things done on the border, because if we keep that as a real problem, it'll help me in the next election. Which is why we're able to pass any bipartisan border legislation to actually fix the asylum problem that we have right now, that the current government's hands are tied on.
Seb?
I just, most of that is just absolutely risible. He loves himself more than anything, any other human being on the planet.
That was your takeaway,
that's
bro?
why he's facing 730 years in prison right now because he wants to be president again. He could have just gone off back to his private life, running his businesses. But no, he actually said a few days ago, I'm prepared to go to jail and make that sacrifice any day because the Constitution is more important than my freedom. That sounds like a very selfish individual. Absolutely.
Do you not think, though, I think it's a fair critique to say that Donald Trump is narcissistic, and so he would want to go back because he feels that he was badly treated. The reason he didn't get reelected was the election was stolen, and he wants to show the world that it's a personal ambition project rather than
at the cost of going to prison.
Well, some people want to sacrifice themselves so everyone can see how they've been badly treated because they're so obsessed with.
And not just that.
I'm glad we're so good at.
Somebody else brings this up. He might have. I'm not saying he would have, but he might have faced these legal consequences regardless. So, pretending that like Trump is this noble self-sacrificial figure, no offense, part of the reason why I think that Trump wants to run again is so that he can run again. And then if he gets elected, even if he has pending criminal trials or pending criminal convictions, he can pardon himself. That's part of the reason why I think he's running, is because he will have a legal shield with which he can use. Fate of History says, I met Dylan at PV Ohio event. It's so wild. Such a young guy knows so much history. Some college dropouts have a passion for learning. Yeah. No, you should
He's
follow
a
where your brain
smart
takes
guy.
you.
I was amazed, like when you talk to him. I'm one of the people that got. Actually, I'm the person that got Dylan involved with PV, and the reason I did that is seeing him debate Ukraine. Just like I wake up every day. I read the New York Times. I read WAPO. I read WSJ. His knowledge just eclipses mine. It's astonishing. Yeah.
Well, before we get back into it, Mr. Bombastic brings up an interesting correction. He says he can't pardon himself from state charges as far as I know. I would like to see. Oh, okay. Well, then he might have been facing those consequences no matter what. So let's continue.
Psychoanalyzing people from the outside.
Just saying, that's what a lot of people would think.
But let's look at the facts. He wouldn't be where he is today if he wasn't running again. That's just, we know that. This is an attempt to steal an election before any vote is cast. Whether it's the Fannie Willis corrupt prosecutor in Georgia, whether it's the person, Letitia James or Alvin Bragg, funded by George Soros during their campaigns, because sadly we elect these people in America, and who campaigned on putting President Trump in prison. How perverse is that? And with regards to, he did it all for himself.
Sorry, got to pause again. If you earnestly believe that somebody committed a crime and you're running for state attorney, that is not an indictment of your character if you are running on the principle of putting that person in jail or prison. So for instance, let's say that I was like running for the LA district attorney during like 1991 or 1990 or something like that. And OJ Simpson was already rumored to, like, they're probably going to acquit him. They're probably not going to charge him or find him guilty or whatever. And I ran on prosecuting OJ Simpson, and then I prosecute OJ Simpson. That is not an indictment of my character.
Yeah.
If I earnestly believe it.
But God, I feel like I'm taking the more conservative approach today on today's show. Don't you at least understand? I agree with you that it is fair and appropriate for them to do it. And I personally don't have a problem with that. At the same time, it is going to be read as political prosecution. And given that Trump is the former president, don't you think, I think it's
that's why we should go for it all. This is why Biden
are going to do it. Yes,
this is why Hunter should catch 30 years. Yeah, absolutely, I love it. Yes,
I'm not going to justify Hunter. Yes,
no, but see that I'm joking, but I'm not. But like, so if we're going to hit Trump with all of these felonies and trying to change the vote and hush money payments and all that kind of stuff, which by the way, like, he could even catch felonies. I think it would be odd if he spent anywhere more than a year in any kind of incarceration whatsoever. If anything, I think because of his age and wealth and influence and all that kind of stuff, he would probably be like house arrest or something. But with Hunter has allegedly, I'll say that I believe it more than most, he has committed felonies, and he's committed tax felonies, and he's committed drug felonies, and he's committed gun felonies. So as a result, throw the book at Trump, but also throw the book at Hunter, and a Biden can serve 20 years sitting right next to a Trump serving for 20 years, and I'll be a happy centrist camper.
I love it. No, I agree. I think it would be amazing to aggressively prosecute this. Like, it's just a good political issue. And obviously we can't use our justice system to prosecute political opponents, but there's certainly a correct sense out there in America on right, left, center, apolitical, that the very rich and powerful get a very different deal in the country than the rest of us. I think that's true. So I think aggressively prosecuting this kind of corruption, if the evidence is there, I actually think it's really good for the country to see stuff like this.
Then here's the other problem, though. Vinny Hotdog asks if Hunter did anything wrong. My answer is yes, but if you don't want to hear me rant for 20 minutes exclusively about Hunter Biden, I'm going to leave it at yes. The thing that that makes me uncomfortable is I feel like a lot of Democrats and liberals, my complaints about Hunter Biden and why it's taken so long for prosecution and the laptop and this, that, the other, it kind of falls on deaf ears. But part of the reason why it falls on deaf ears is because we borderline expect this out of our political class. We expect them to have Nepo babies. We expect them to get the Nepo babies Nepo jobs. We expect the Nepo babies to get hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, and we expect them to funnel it back into the family. And we don't call this corruption. We call this lobbying, or we call call this nepotism. We call this cronyism. And so as a result, I agree with you that I would love to see corruption prosecuted more aggressively in the United States. But I think that we would actually have to fundamentally change the way we do business in Washington, D.C. in order to even start prosecutions, because this is so normal.
I agree. So how about this? Like, I'm of the opinion that no matter who wins this time around, the Democratic Party needs a new identity. So what if one of the core things of the Democratic Party that we made ourselves stand for is, you know what? We're going to aggressively prosecute corruption. Right, left, center, let's find out where it is and prosecute it. And you start really looking into campaign donations, and you start really enforcing FEC stuff. People don't know this, but so much stuff goes on with campaign reporting, and there's not Trump dismantled the FEC and the mechanisms to actually do stuff about that. I follow the law running my PAC, and we work very closely with their lawyer, but truth be told, the FEC is barely functioning right now.
But I think that would poll really well, but I have to say that when maybe I'm being a little bit mean myself, but I imagine, no offense, I imagine Democrats, especially the upper tier of Democrats, being snotty, hoity-toity liberals who are making a shitload of money, who basically, like, the reason why they are Democrats or liberals is so that they can have a moral veneer of like justification and justice in their lives, rather than actually caring about like corruption or money or anything like that. So like, while I think this would hit with the population, I do not see the upper echelons of the DNC signing on for this.
I agree with you. There would be a lot of political will not to do it. But, you know, we talk about the power of the grassroots all the time in the Democratic Party. I don't think it's impossible to build something like this from the bottom up. And like, this is a thing. If you're talking about this perception, this wide perception that the Democrats don't stand for working class people, aggressively going after this kind of corruption. Maura Healey is our current governor here in Massachusetts. You know, she made her name by aggressively prosecuting white-collar crime here in the state. The whole drug lab scandal, where they were cooking up results and sending people to prison for it, you know, she was one of the figures behind making sure that that happened. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. There's a political constituency that's not going to want to hear it, but god damn, would it be a good message to hear the Democrats are the ones that if you are fucking giving out bribes or giving sweetheart deals that cross a legal line to your children, you're going to actually go face some legal consequences for that. God damn, would I love to see that. I would
vote for that person happily.
100%.
Yeah.
So I just think, like, if we're looking for a future for the Democratic Party, this kind of stuff that goes beyond left versus right, identity politics, pissing matches that automatically devolves into culture war bullshit. I just think we got to be so much smarter, sidestep that, and focus on stuff that a broad electorate is going to get behind. And as long as I'm fired up, I want to hit this head on. Okay, here's a tweet from Screaming Stromovic, or however the hell you say the Stromovic. Okay. So Hunter Wu goes to prison, but Brianna Wu keeps covering for Keffels. What did I say about this literally just a few days ago? I said, I woke up this morning, I thought about my stream the other day, fuck Keffels. Okay? That is,
you don't even have to go that far.
Yes.
So hold on. So
yes.
Sturbovich, this is I kind of wanted to joke with you and be like, goes to prison, but Wu keeps covering for Keffels. This is a non sequitur, okay? These things have nothing to fucking do with each other. And on top of that, Brianna, I'll ask you, we don't know where the money is, but in general, as a principle, do you support financial misappropriation of GoFundMe, just as a principle?
No.
Okay. No. Do you support DIY HRT with HRT that's been made in some random lab that has cat hair inside it?
No. Don't support minors taking HRT that's not prescribed by a doctor, period. And I've said repeatedly, Keffels should not have done that.
Okay, and then hold on, there was one more. Oh, do you believe that HRT bottles should be covered in either Shota or Lolicon art?
No. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Then final question. Do you think that HRT or hormones or gender transition should be actively hidden from parents and done through criminal organizations behind the back of the parents?
No, I don't even think if you transition in school secretly, I think parents need to know about that. I don't like this idea that public schools are facilitating stuff that parents are not involved with. It doesn't help the child if they need to transition. They can't get health care because the parents don't know about it. So listen, I've said this again and again and again. I am not angry at Clara. You know, I considered her a friend for a long time, but I'm done running cover for her. So just because Chud says it, because he's not listening to the stuff I'm saying on stream in a way that's intellectually fair, doesn't make it true. Listen to what I'm saying. That's my position. Get off my fucking back.
Well, and then finally, I'm just going to respond one more time to Mr. Sturmovich. Reductionist arguments endlessly. No, these are not reductionist. These are the core of the issues. These are the things that we care about. So, for instance, if I said it before, I'll say it again. We all defend people who do end up being cringe or doing cringe things or doing bad things. Chud Logic, he loved Mr. Girl. They were road dogs for a while. You know, I think Queeman and Mr. Girl are still road dogs. And by the way, like Mr. Girl has redeeming qualities. So I'm not talking like
100%.
total shit about him. Even though I think that let's just say he has some negative qualities as well. I'm trying to think of who else. Oh, Nick DiOrio stand tipster for way too long. The entire commentary community stand tipster for way too long. So basically, like what you're really mad at is somebody who is friends with somebody not being fast enough to throw somebody under the bus. So that's what you're mad at. I think it's lame. I think you need to move on.
100%.
So
do you want to read the super chat?
I will. Kino Tech USA says, many of my preconceived notions about Brianna have been invalidated by this combo. I've been very critical for years, but I sincerely apologize.
Well, I appreciate that. Shoot me a tweet after the show. I'll follow you back. Let's just reboot things. Let's move forward from here. I would love to.
Let's start from scratch. All right, cool. Then let's move. I want to take more psychic damage. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
And he did nothing for America or destroyed America. Do you have any idea how much energy costs went up under the Trump administration, just for average families?
The president doesn't influence energy costs that much.
He does when he shuts down fracking and all licenses for oil exploration on federal lands. Don't divert.
U.S. oil production is at an all-time high, so that's
absolutely not true.
It is.
Not true.
It is. We're energy independent right now.
Okay, you're making stuff up. Okay,
people
how
look it
much did energy go up? Do you know under Trump?
Are we counting the last year under COVID when the entire world was slowing down?
Over 4 years, how much did energy go up? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
4%. Do you know how much it's gone up in the last 3.5 years under Biden?
I'm not sure.
28%. Who's destroying America?
So, but that's also a global trend. Inflation,
but also
isn't
it's
just
a
a thing
function
that
of
affects.
what we created when we were in the Trump administration. For the first time in our history, we were net exporters of energy. Think about what that does for the lifeblood. An economy requires energy. I know it's a scary, evil thing for the left, but oil and gas is how you run an economy. It's how you get food to people. So when we became the first time ever a net exporter, or talk about the other aspects of the economy, we had the lowest unemployment for minorities in the United States since record keeping began, and the lowest unemployment for women for 70 years. Look at what we have today.
That's bad. Women should be in the home.
The fact that most families in this nation cannot handle a $500 emergency. They don't have $500 worth of.
That was before.
That's why Harlem is shouting, "We love you, Trump." I don't know if you saw President Trump after he had to leave the court last week. He delivered pizzas to the firefighters in Manhattan.
Oh,
it's really interesting to watch that video,
pizza.
Not just of how he was received by those people who run into fires to save Americans. One of the firefighters actually audibly says in the background, "Save us, Mr. Trump." That doesn't happen if the man's selfish and if the economy's absolutely superb. It happens when you let in 8 million illegals in 3.5 years to crush the working man and woman in America.
Stephen, even as a fair observer, you would have to say, and feel free to come back on the points Seb made as well, but the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue, seems to be much, much worse under President Biden. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we're facing unique issues right now. Yeah. under Biden.
So why would you want to re-elect a man who has allowed this many illegal immigrants in, despite the fact that I think it's fair to say the vast majority of Americans agree that this shouldn't be happening?
I think that when it comes to border stuff or immigration stuff,
Ooh.
I think that most of the disagreement, I think for America, I think we generally agree on most things for what the immigration policy should look like. The problem is we have a very unique problem right now at the border relating to asylum seeking, and the federal government's hands are tied in terms of how you can deal with those people. So
Is it going to get
works
there?
right now? If you're an illegal immigrant and you come up to the border, you see that like the encounters have gone up dramatically. Well, so was the actual catch rate of people coming in. Like, not that many people are sneaking past the border guards. The reason why is because you don't have to actually sneak into the country anymore. You just have to show up between a port of entry, or maybe even at a port of entry now, and go, hey, I'm here to seek asylum. And once you've done that, it's like a get out of jail.
Yeah, it's a process.
And you're basically, they have to take you in, they have to process you because of how the federal laws on the books are right now. And then because we don't have enough judges to actually go through all the cases, you're given basically a slip. You're saying, hey, please show up for your trial. And then you basically release them into the country. Some people will try to say that like Biden does catch and release, or we have like a catch and release law. But we don't really. It's like a combination of pretty complicated things on the books for how we deal with asylum seekers. Now, Biden and the Democrats in Congress wanted to deal with this, but Trump was literally telling Republicans in Congress, do not touch the border issue. That's why the bipartisan bill that Republicans had largely approved of a few years earlier got completely shut down, because Republicans don't want to close this issue. Again, in classic Trump fashion, which is putting Trump ahead of the country, we didn't do anything about the border because Trump was telling Republicans not to fix a particular issue because he wants to win re-election. That's an issue that Biden and the Democrats tried to solve, but we couldn't do it.
And look, I want to hear Seb's answer to that and other things you're about to say, but just, I can tell you someone, look, I was born in the former Soviet Union. I don't live in America. I can promise you this unique set of circumstances that you're talking about, like every other country in the world, pretty much except Western Europe, is able to have a border, right? You can't just turn up to the border of Russia or China and like walk in and then be like, oh, can I please? That's not how it works. It's not, look, the idea that a country has a border has not been controversial for very long. This is a very new thing. And the fact that the number of people has skyrocketed since President Biden was elected, you can't put that on the Republicans.
Well, I'm not putting anything on the Republicans. What I'm saying is what I'm putting on them is the refusal to fix the actual issue, which is passing legislation to do it. And the last huge bipartisan bill that died in the House was supposed to increase the amount of judges we have to work through asylum seekers. It was supposed to change the standards that we would use to evaluate people claiming asylum. And it would have increased funding basically for every part of the
Wouldn't it be
security.
easier to just erect a physical barrier that prevents people from going into this country except at a port of entry?
No, it wouldn't do anything.
Why not?
This is the frustrating thing.
Okay, so let's pause it and go through this. So
I have debated this, and I do have points for it, and I just took major psychic damage.
well,
No,
actually,
you go first. You go first.
no,
I'm having an aneurysm. Like I have a blood vessel in my head that's exploding.
First of all, I just want to read a super chat. Common Cure, $5 says, I could have sworn this morning I heard my dog bark. It sounded like I love Trump. That's why you discipline your dog. But no, I think this is a fair point that Constantine is making. Why? Like, I don't know how anyone can be honest and can look at the border situation and can come to the conclusion that it's being done well. I am on the left. I want an open immigration policy, not open immigration policy. I want people to be able to come into the country, right? I live in Boston. We have two industries here, tech and biotech, and both of them really depend on, H1, the visas with people with specialized tech expertise coming into the country and being able to work. Like, I have no problem with immigration. I got a really, really big problem with an open border where people can be smuggling drugs, sex trafficking can happen, radiological material can come through, terrorists from God knows where can come to the United States and strike us. This is a real problem. And I think Constantine is raising a very fair point, which is other countries can make this happen. What is specifically going wrong in the United States that we cannot? I understand there's like we have a very large border, our southern southern border, that's got to be very difficult to police. But it's also true that we've got new technology. We've got drones that can fly through the air and scan for people that are illegally crossing. Why can't we get this damn problem solved?
Because we don't want to. Reason being is that agriculture is reliant on migrant labor. If we actually approved visas for migrant labor or allowed people in on a legal basis, then we wouldn't be able to deport them later, or they would actually choose to stay, and we don't want that. So, we're reliant on this effectively like slave labor for our agricultural processes, but we don't, which is why we don't want to fully close the border. Now, for me, this is just, kicking the can down the road, and this is not good governance. What I would say is that instead, what you should do is you should absolutely have like a migrant visa program where you approve a certain amount of people to come into the country and you expect them to leave after a certain point, and that it should be a relatively fair system. Now, I took some notes here. So Destiny hit a lot of points that I really like, and then he did one that I just want to kill myself over. So increasing funding dealing with the asylum process definitionally. So this is an important thing. Right now, it's almost like a dry foot policy. If you step foot in the United States and you declare asylum and a border patrol agent encounters you, you basically have to get processed, meaning that they take you into custody, they take your name, they take your date, they assign you a court date, et cetera, et cetera. This would have changed under the bipartisan bill, where if you do not report to a port of entry, you do not get your hearing. You get auto-deported. That would be a huge help for the way definitions are run. Then, if you do report to a port of entry, then they would have an expedited definition where they would raise the threat, because right now it's like threat of death or great bodily harm if you return to your country of origin. And they would raise the threat level in order to screen people out, and they would add a level in the process where you wouldn't have to see the judge who's making the final determination. You would basically need to see a pre-screening judge, and the pre-screening judge would help deal with that flow, because if you're not in immediate threat of death or great bodily harm, then you're auto kicked out. So that was another thing that they were adding. And then finally, they were adding more judges and adding more border patrol officers. I think it was one border patrol officer for every 3 miles. It was effectively 6% of the population of the Border Patrol Security Service. They were adding to it. This was all good shit. And I would have so much rather have taken a bird in the hand instead of 2 in the bush and then lost both birds, is what we did. So fuck Trump for that, and fuck Sebastian Gorka for apologizing for it. I do have one more point about Destiny taking psychic damage, but I kind of heard you
Go
wanting
ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, so the physical barrier doesn't do anything. I want to fucking stab myself through the goddamn eyes every time I hear a Democrat or a liberal or a progressive say this shit. If you have declared ports of entry and then you have a giant fucking fence that's 30 feet goddamn tall, Mexicans and Central Americans are not magical creatures. They do not have the ability to jump 50 feet. They do not have any stronger pole vaulting abilities than we do. They are not a Wile E. Coyote or, Looney Tunes characters that can just dig endless miles of trench underneath stuff without you shutting it down. It is fucking crazy that we have denied the physical reality that if you put people and fencing in front of things, it is less likely for people to go through that fencing and pass those people. So just as an example, the DC is currently surrounded, or was surrounded, by fencing during like protests and shit. So should I have gone to like DC police and been like, you don't need those fences or those barriers. Fences actually don't do anything. I have a study on it. Like, no, they would laugh me out of the fucking room and they would call me an idiot on the way out. So this is a crazy fucking talking point that progressives and liberals just are insistent on, and it makes me want to kill myself every time I hear it.
I just think we're really in delusion about how salient this issue is, not just with the right wing, but with the wider electorate. Americans don't want an open border, right? And the conversation about how this is cheapening labor, it's just true. Like, it just is true. And, if you look at how much harder and harder it is to make a living as a trucker, labor coming in from the southern border is a component of that. So I just, it's just not a radical idea that we've got to take care of business. And just one more thing on this, the feminist argument for this I think is one of the very, very most compelling. If you fly at all nowadays, you're going to see posters up everywhere for sex trafficking, which is a huge problem, and it's getting worse. The way this basically sex slaves are trafficked into the United States. It's if you read these stories and you read about the cartels and how they make money from doing this and how these girls are kidnapped and abused and traumatized and die early deaths. I mean, it's just, why would you want that kind of horror for little girls? Like we talk so much about this stuff. I don't want some 15-year-old to get raped repeatedly and impregnated by some perv because we can't take our border seriously and for a cartel to make $60,000. So I think is not a partisan issue. I wish we could take this seriously. I think Destiny's critique that the Republicans did not want a bill passed so they would have an election year issue is very fair, but it's also true we have ignored this issue for a really long time, and it's time to get serious about it.
I'm just going to remain skeptical because I think it's a problem that we don't actually want to solve, and so I would like to propose a new bill, jokingly, in which we annex Central America and Canada and make the greater United States of America. I'm joking because I know it would be wildly unpopular. However, if everybody else in the United States was like, yes, let's do it, I would immediately stop joking. I would be dead fucking serious about it.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Because the issue is what I said. The issue, if you look at the vast majority of people that are coming in, and you talk about things like catch and release, it's asylum seekers. These are laws on the books that have to change. You can go to a border right now as an illegal immigrant and just like, hey, I'm like claiming asylum. Can I come in?
Nothing to do with laws.
And then that's the issue that you have.
Nothing to do with laws. Say that smugly.
The current immigration issue is the asylum seeking process. And you say that like, well, other countries have borders and they don't have to deal with this. When the Syrian refugee crisis happened, I'm sure you remember, because I think it was probably a big motivating factor for Brexit, even if it was in the background. There were tons of refugees that were streaming into Europe, and there was a huge crisis. You saw a lot of right-wing parties gain popularity because of how unhappy people were. In Sweden, you've still got residual issues relating to those immigrants. You had the AfD rising in popularity in Germany. You had Marine Le Pen becoming popular again in France.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But the problem is that all of those decisions about letting those people in, they were political decisions. And that's why people are frustrated, because the decision to allow 1 million refugees into Germany was a political decision, after which Angela Merkel admitted that multiculturalism doesn't work. It's not like the countries failed to have a border. It's that politicians choose to create a situation where millions of people flood into the United States.
I agree, but that's the choice that Trump and the Republicans have made right now, when we've said, hey, we can change this with bipartisan infrastructure, or with bipartisan immigration legislation. It was on the books. It wasn't on the books. It was a bill. It was ready to be passed. It would have addressed all of these issues. But Trump told Republicans, do not pass this bill. I need this as an election issue. And he didn't, even though this bill had, I wish I could remember the name of the Republican that had co-authored this, but this is like basically a Republican authored bill that would have fixed all of these problems.
I want to give you more time on other points. But
I will say one also, just so once we
please. We're truly honored to be partnered with Monk Debates, the place where the world's leading thinkers.
I'm going to skip his commercial.
Debate the most pressing.
And that's rude of me, considering I expect people to watch my commercials, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Trigonometry. I hope you're doing well.
It's less a commercial and more sponsored content. So there it is.
Okay. Good for them. We are hitting 8 p.m. Do you want to roll to like 8:30?
Let's keep going. We'll go to 8:30 or 9 if you want to.
Okay, sounds good. I probably, just because I have to do Warhammer content, I'm probably going to close it out at 8:30, but that's just a heads up.
That sounds great. Sounds great.
All right, let's see if we can get some more brain damage. I do like his setup. He has an excellent studio.
It's really astonishing when you go and do Constantine. Yeah.
Were you there in person?
Yeah, I did it in person. They've got first of all, they got this like rock star's house and lit it professionally. It was like I've done Netflix shows with less production values that they had.
What state is he in?
Well, he flies in and out and just gets people to lend him studios whenever he comes to the States.
Oh, that's nice. That's smart.
I think speaks to his networking ability.
Nice.
my interjections about immigration, and I think they're fair, certainly from my perspective. But the one thing I have also heard, including from many Republicans who might be mutual friends of ours or people who are high up in the Republican Party, is that Donald Trump is playing politics with these issues right now in order that he has a better chance of winning.
That's politics, though,
No, I don't.
baby.
Let's talk about this canard that the left wants to fix this, and they had legislation that a rhino, a fake conservative, sponsored in the Senate.
I hate that shit so
Legislation
much.
stated that if you sign this into law, you will allow at least 5,000 illegals into America every 24 hours.
No,
We're going to say that's garbage. That's insanity. The idea that they, in good faith, want to fix this. Let's just look. In preparation for today, I called up the former committee.
that's a canard. Okay, I just to interrupt because this dude is a pompous ass. So the 5,000 people per day was the trigger at which point the president can assert executive authority and then shut down the border.
Yeah.
So it's not a we are automatically going to let in 5,000 people, although admittedly, just because of push-pull pressure, that probably would end up being the number. But if you actually have an expeditious process that gets rid of people faster, then taking in 5,000 shouldn't be a problem. But to frame it that way, and then also to call any kind of pragmatic rightoid a rhino or a cuck or whatever, I think it's idiotic, and I think we're letting the asylees run the asylum.
I fully agree.
Of Customs and Border Protection, and I asked him, "What is the situation like?" Let's just talk about one statistic, because 8 million illegals. It's hard to even fathom. In the last 3.5 years, they have intercepted 47,000 felons at the border. These are criminals coming into America. That is a 99% increase over our 4 years in government. Let's just say 100% increase. Besides that, they found 160,000 felons, convicted felons in America, including 4,700 murderers and 8,000 gang members, one of whom murdered a beautiful 22-year-old nursing student called Laken Riley in Georgia, a man who murdered her after he was asyleed into America by Joe Biden's system, was then arrested for endangerment of a minor in New York, and Alvin Bragg, the Democrat DA of New York, led him onto the street so he could murder this 22-year-old. Let's be clear. They created this. You're right. It's policy decisions. My parents were real refugees, real asylum seekers, because if my dad had gone back to the land of his birth, as an escaped prisoner from a communist prison, he would have been shot on sight. You can't say 8 million political prisoners are coming across the border into America. And let's just use the stats of the left. The United Nations, hardly a hard MAGA entity. Human Rights Watch, not exactly America First. What have these organizations stated about the deluge, the invasion of illegals across our border under Biden? Between 50 and 60% of the girls and the women are being raped or sexually assaulted by the coyotes, by the human traffickers. It is absolutely empirically a statement of fact that Joe Biden has become the largest human trafficker in human history.
God.
The party of,
Come on, sir.
No,
Come on. He's not
numerically.
Come on.
Numerically.
No, that's not what I'm disputing. I'm disputing the idea that he is a human trafficker.
Totally.
This
his
is
policies.
It's happening under his watch.
It's his decision. Let's talk about what he's.
Fucking kill me, dude.
This is the most stupid.
Literally, the thing about it is, if you were to give me those stats, 50,000 felons encountered at the border, this person was let go by a soft DA, resulted in a homicide, all that kind of stuff. Frankly, I think my greater USA plan becomes more appealing by the sentence. But at the same time, okay, these are things that I can contend with of yes, this is why the matter is so urgent. This is why we need to deal with it. But then you're basically saying that, so let's focus on what he just said, which is probably why he's in the position that he's in, as a political commentator. Joe Biden is personally responsible, and if anything, directing the sexual assault of I don't know, a few 100,000 women every single year.
Yeah.
That's an insane statement. And for him to even pretend that it's not hyperbole is fucking crazy.
I think this is like, I've been criticizing left-wing echo chambers a lot lately, but I think this is a problem with the right-wing echo chamber. You don't have to mislead the audience in order to make a point about the border. It's really self-evident. Like the honest investigation, you can go to the New York Times and look at their reporting on this and come to the conclusion there's a real problem. And I think that this is my problem with right-wing media, is it just, it gets so inflammatory, and you start believing these talking points, like the idea that our president is sex trafficking. Yeah,
you're incentivized as a pundit to be that way, though. Okay, so let's be real. So we flirted with 100 tonight. We're currently at 80 cross-platform. Thank you for being here tonight, ladies and germs. Thank you to the donors. Go ahead and like the stream; it's free. So I appreciate that we got 100 people, which, let's face it, that's 4 classrooms worth of people coming together in order to engage with real content, right? Or at least like the attempt to engage with real content. Tim Pool, as an example, will harp on about how the country's fallen apart. Trump is the Messiah. We're on the verge of a civil war, blah, 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 blah. And he's rewarded for hyperbole. And at some point, as a pundit, when do you not just see that like hyperbole is the way to get attention, attention is the way to get money, and then you're just like, fuck it. Yeah. I'll just be the most dumb talking points, hyperbolic monster in the room as long as it makes me a multimillionaire. And I swear to God, that's what I hear whenever I hear something this hyperbolic.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Don't you think to a certain extent
it's worse for the country?
That playbook is failing. I mean, I think the reason Destiny has gotten to be so popular is he really does, really struggle with things. He tries to give the other side a fair shake and understand their arguments. I think for me, kind of rebuilding my own reputation after Gamergate, is taking some work and like really being able to hear people in good faith. That's how we got to be friends in the whole first place. So I hear what you're saying, but I almost think it's a media playbook that's dying. But just because Ann Coulter is not as popular as she used to be, and I think about the people that are really succeeding now, like Constantine. He's clearly more right, but he's not.
The shtick does burn out.
Sure, 100%. I think things are changing, and nuance and thoughtfulness is the new radicalism. To be completely fair.
Well, we'll see. I still think that hyperbole is going to serve its place. And then there was also that other gentleman. I'm trying to think of his name, but my dad watches all his interviews. He has a very similar vibe to Constantine, and he does one-on-one interviews. He's been on with Destiny before as well. I'm sure people know who I'm talking about. But he's kind of like dry, a little monotonous, all that kind of stuff. But he does like an interview style show, and he's wildly popular as well. It's interesting. I don't think it's entirely true, but you did point out that Ann Coulter is not as popular. Milo Yiannopoulos, and then Richard Spencer. And think about Lex Friedman. Thank you, ACAP. So Lex Friedman is the gentleman that I was thinking about, who's kind of like more dry interviewee or whatever, but he's doing well. Yeah. So no, there are all sorts of people who burn out. Steven Crowder, who is probably still a multi-millionaire, but he's taken some hits recently.
How about Pearl? She's flaming out.
Pearl.
She's fun to laugh at, but is she doing well?
She's got millions of views, but they're all shorts. And by the way, like I had 2.7 million views on a short, and that was $60.
Yeah.
So are you able to make a sustainable political punditry career off of shorts? I don't know. I think that's also, if you get demonetized off of YouTube, that seems brutal.
Yeah.
But you have Vinny Hot Dog's comment highlighted for a while, so I want to say it. So that
sorry.
face. No, it's fine. I love it. That face when you're the most hardcore patriotic NATO enjoying American, but then you realize you're actually Brazilian and you're stuck with socialism. When will Biden come for my vote? And this is why my Pan-American Greater United States of America, plan is the best. So yeah, so go ahead and vote counterpoints.
I want to do a show. I want to do a show and talk through that. I think that's an interesting idea.
Well, I have serious proposals, so yeah. But let's entertain the folks for another few minutes.
No, hold on. But he's not a human trafficker. That's ridiculous.
His policies have made his government Empirically, you can't argue with
Empirically, you can't
12,000
argue with it.
illegals
It's
a day.
objectively true.
12,000.
To call someone a human trafficker implies they're doing it on purpose. Come on.
They are doing it on purpose. I'll tell you why. Because they are so bigoted and so racist. Remember, this is the Democrat Party, the party of the KKK, the party of the Jim Crow laws. This is the party that, you know, whose activist murdered the first Republican president, Lincoln, the great emancipator. This is the DNA of the Democrats. The Democrats are so fundamentally bigoted. They believe if we let in millions of illegals because they're brown-skinned, because they're black-skinned, when we amnesty them and give them naturalization and citizenship, they will vote for us because of their skin color. This is CRT at its core, critical race theory, and that's why they're doing it. This isn't an accident. You don't open the borders an accident. You know that. And this isn't because of humanitarian stuff. Let's talk about why it's happening technically and why he is.
This is what's disgusting to me, is because I feel like conspiratorial boomers would hear all of the malice with which he assigns his opponents and just assume him to be correct, and it's the perfect conspiracy theory. It's the perfect thing to create like the opposing force as this, you know, rawly evil antagonistic force that just not only do they hate you, the tribe that is opposing them, they hate their own members so aggressively that they view them as disgusting subhuman pawns within their own games. That's how the elite views their own constituency. And this is this is the kind of rhetoric that, no offense to anybody who likes Sebastian Gorka in chat, but the only way that you could engage with this engage with this enthusiastically is if you're a fucking moron.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you could do it.
It feels like all of his points are designed to hold frame of the fringe right-wing ecosystem rather than win over anyone that may be undecided. And one of the really big things that shifted in my thinking is I very rarely care about talking to people that are on the left. The fastest growing part of the American electorates are independents. It's 42% of it, and it's growing. To put that into perspective, fringe leftists are between 2 and 1% of the electorate. You know,
they're just so fucking loud
I know it sucks up so much of the oxygen, but I think if you're serious about winning elections, tempering your message and talking to people that are moderates, like, you got to go to where the votes are. And I think this is what's so damaging about the Republican Party is I think they've increasingly lost the willingness to be able to do that.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, though, is we've seen this particularly with Bernie, the whole, like, you know, Bernie got betrayed kind of thing, is that people were running to the fringes during the primary and then they ran to the center during the general. And even that happened with Super Tuesday, where Biden got kind of selected as the de facto presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party, is that it does seem that ultimately the center does win out. The reason why this election actually is kind of important for me is because I don't view Biden as like a far left radical diversity, equity, and inclusion, pro Hamas, wants to trans your kids, you know, whatever. Like, I don't view him that way at all. But I do view Trump as probably the king of the right wing fringe. And so as a result, I want to see the centrist normies beat out the fringe.
I have to agree with that. I really do. I think I have spent a decade in progressive politics, and I've just come to the conclusion that not only are we just structurally unable to work together closely enough to get policy passed, I've just come to believe that there's just no power in this. Like, take our signature issue, Medicare for all. When you really start digging into it, I want that policy. I know you want that policy, Connor, but when you really start digging into it, there are questions, and it's a hard sell to the American public. So for instance,
sorry, just to expand on that. So the Medicare for all, I think, boils down to like a single payer system, if I understand it correctly. Whereas like most developed countries have multi-payer. So they have like a hybridized market, public backed policy thing. And I think that I've become a communitarian over the past few years. And what I mean by that is that, like, it's a balance between the individual and the community. So the reason why I'm for universal access to healthcare is because I think that you are entering into a contract with your society that says, I am going to give you 40 to 60 years of my productive life, and I am going to give you 40 hours a week of my best time in my life. And as a result, I want to be able to eat decent food. I want to be able to take care of my family. I want to be able to take care of my health. And I want to, maybe go to Disney and Europe a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is a fair shake. And what I think is not a fair shake is just expecting people to be slaves forever, to catch cancer randomly, and then to die. I think that's horrific. So
I think that's fair. All right, let's get through a little more of it. We've only got 12 more minutes.
Sure, but I do want to read this comment. Common Cure says, we've gotten to the point where if you ask someone why they voted for Trump over Hillary, they'll say because they heard Hillary drinks baby blood. I still subscribe to that theory, so I just want to...
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Finish the point, and I want to say something.
How do these people come into America?
Joe Biden drives them.
Stephen, CBP1 is the app that illegals download on their way to America. It's funded by you and me, by American taxpayers. They're sitting in Mexico. They're sitting in the Dominican Republic. They're sitting in Afghanistan. And they download an app where they pre-clear themselves. You tick a box. I am Mickey Mouse and I'm an asylum seeker. When you cross the border, you say, hey, I'm registered, and you're let into America. That's deliberate, Konstantin. That's not accidental, that's deliberate. And these people are political refugees.
Okay. Why didn't you build a wall when you had the chance?
We tried to, and we were finally consistent. You know what President Trump had to do? This is the insanity. The protestations from the establishment were hysterical. We had to repurpose DOD funds and say the border is actually a national security issue if you've got terrorists coming across the border. We had to repurpose national security funds to build the border and buy the steel to build the wall. That took us over a year. What does Joe Biden do? He comes into the administration, and the steel members that we had bought to secure the border, he sold them for scrap iron. That's why it's deliberate, and that's why he's a human trafficker.
Jesus.
The talking points are funny. I think it's really funny. I think if you're listening to this in video form, I think you should rewind, because I think Seb accidentally gave away part of the plot. It's funny because you described that border bill, and you said that it allows 5,000 illegal immigrants to come in a day. Minimum? Wrong. That was the maximum cap.
No.
One of the issues that we faced.
Yes.
I did read it. Let me finish. I did read it. You should read it as well. No, I did read it. And it's funny because what you'd said later on was that we were seeing numbers sometimes in excess of 12,000 per day. The reason why that bill was so important, one of the things that would have been nice is it would have actually placed a cap on the amount of people that were coming in and claiming asylum. That 5,000 per day would have said that once we hit this cap, we are not processing anybody else. You could have the most legitimate
that's the fucking bill, you lying.
Allow you into this country, which was already about to be challenged by a ton of legal people around the United States. And I think the international, there were international bodies as well, because whether or not you can cap asylum seekers is still an internationally debated topic, but that is what that legislation seeks to do. If you
so if he says no, he's lying
about the border. Why didn't we pass any bipartisan infrastructure or bipartisan immigration legislation? Why did Trump shut it down?
You have to have the other side acting in good faith.
You can say that, but you did. If you really truly believe that the other side is at fault, then it seems like you need a candidate besides Trump, because Trump wasn't able to get anything done when he was president. You just said it yourself that Trump had to repurpose DOD funds to do it. Trump had a larger margin in Congress. Trump had all three branches of government and accomplished less than Biden did when it came to legislation, when it came to the border, when it came to infrastructure, when it came to
here we go.
Running this country. And Trump was the one that came in saying, I'm the business guy. I can bring people together. I can get these things done because I know how to get people to work together. And all I hear from people,
can you pause it for a second?
Well, the deep state got me.
Have you seen Scream 5 and 6, Connor?
I have not.
Okay, so there's a great moment. They have a new protagonist in Scream 6, and one of the great things is Samantha Carpenter. She's the heroine of it. At the end of every single Scream 6 movie or Scream 5 movie, she goes stab-o-matic, and she'll just get the bad guy and just over and over and really get into it. I love it when Destiny goes like turbo autist mode on it like this. It's just his Samantha Carpenter moment where he's like bam, 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 bam with the facts. I love it. This is my favorite.
I'm going to say something edgy because that's my job. It's his Hispanic heritage. Listen, That joke goes out to Villa. He was my Mexican friend in the military. He would have approved of that joke even if you didn't at home. So anyways, no, he did a phenomenal job. I'm happy he paid attention. I'm happy that he kind of like he hit that talking point, the 5,000 cap. I got some people in chat saying that it's more complicated than that, but still, a bird in the hand is worth, two in the bush. If you actually had legislation passed bipartisan, and you actually got all the things that we were talking about that were positive, this would have been better than what's going on. And the reason why Sebastian Gorka looks like an angry boss baby right now is because the person that he's simping for just got fucking annihilated. And the reason why is because what is going to be different without violating the Constitution, without evaporating the House of Representatives or the Senate? How would you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish back then now? Because the truth is, people distrust Trump more. They dislike Trump more. There's more Republicans talking shit about him. There's more people. So even if he secured the presidency, if his first election cycle was so combative that he wasn't able to accomplish this, why do you think it's possible in a second election cycle? And that is a question and a point that Destiny made that Sebastian Gorka does not have an answer to. And all he has is Trump was wronged. He deserves to be in there. He should be back in there. But as far as what policies will he actually accomplish, he will not. I want to see the next section to see whether or not he has an answer, because I very much doubt he will.
Okay, before we move on, I've got to take this on. Christian, you look at me. You look at me. Scream is the most important movie franchise in all of American cinema history. Every one of them are good, except for 3. That's not good. They're getting better and better and better. And Scream 5 and Scream 6 are not Scream remakes. They are amazing films. I love the Carpenter sisters. I love Tara Carpenter. I love Amber. Hell, even Scream 4 is amazing. Emma Roberts is one of the best Ghostface in history. So you just watch your damn mouth, okay? Sorry.
Christian Valeris, he's a beloved and longtime chatter, but he does make me angry sometimes as well.
Don't you dare talk shit about Scream. You say whatever you want about me, but do not talk about Samantha Carpenter. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's see if Gorka can recover.
And it was the other guys, and I couldn't do anything, and I had to take money from the DOD to do it, and I couldn't figure anything out, and blah blah blah. And now that he's out of office, supposedly running for America, despite the fact that what he's really running for is so that he can pardon himself from his crimes and be immune from hopefully state charges. What he's really running for, is to save himself, and that's why he didn't care about the border. That's why he tries to continue the border problems. He wasn't able to fix it when he was in office because he's more concerned with his reputation than actually bringing people together to get anything done. I don't understand how, even if you believe everything that you've said, that asylum seeking is an issue, that illegal immigration is an issue, even if you believe that these are issues that are brought by Democrats intentionally and they're destroying the country, which are all ridiculous claims, Donald Trump is not the guy to fix them because he already proved that he couldn't do it once.
All right, so we can go back and forth saying, I read this, I read that. Look it up for yourselves. Everybody can do that, okay? I just want it to be common sense. Does anybody with a straight face have the capacity to say, yeah, the Democrats are strong on the border and immigration and Trump isn't? I mean,
Dodge. No answer. Destiny says, Trump is inefficacious. You had the opportunity. You squandered it. You had more goodwill, more money, more time, more interest, more momentum. You weren't able to do it. What makes you think that you're going to be able to do it this time? And Sebastian Gorka just goes, Democrats are bad.
Yeah.
He did not have a response.
Yep.
It beggars belief. It's risible.
That's one of the weaker points Stephen made, but I think a very strong point that he made right at the end, and the one I'd like to hear you answer, is Donald Trump, you say, didn't build the wall because there was a lack of support from the other side. They were not acting in good faith. Okay. Well, you think there's going to be more good faith after he gets elected?
Ooh! Constantine goes from, hey, you interrupted too much, to, oh my God, you're holding your holding your fella's feet to the fire. That is.
So you didn't think he was going to. This is a good place to stop because it's nearly 8:30. But you didn't think he was going to hold Gorka's feet to the fire. I think
listen.
I would give him an A. I think
I gotta rescind my previous criticism. Okay, that was good. Like, a lot of people will. So I brought up how Dylan did not interrupt or interject his own opinion, but he did help with the flow of conversation. But the truth is that there are things that people do, like non sequiturs, like whataboutism, like red herrings, like appeals to authority, like appeals to consensus. Some of these are, like logical fallacies, right? So a lot of debate nerds know this because we, swam in these waters for so long. But the truth is that the audience, I don't think necessarily thinks in those terms. And so as a result, people can be very slippery rhetorically and get away with it. And actually seeing Constantine catch it and call it out is impressive, because not a lot of people are smart enough to see the dodge, catch the dodge, call out the dodge. That's genuinely impressive.
I would really encourage leftists, if you're in the chat, like, give Constantine a fair shot. I don't agree with him on everything, but I've gotten to know him a bit, and he's arriving at his positions honestly. And I think he's a credit to the discourse. So, maybe push away some of that cynicism.
Listen, if there is a former Soviet centrist who leans a little bit right, who is actually facilitating good conversations in between internet politics and real world politics, I'm all for it. I stand the man, even if I had some criticisms.
We got a comment from Han here before I go. We should only elect presidents who will suck everyone off in Congress to get something done. Yeah, I think we need healthcare in this country. So whatever you got to do,
Listen, that's what Bill Clinton did. That's what Obama did. He went from seat to seat, sucking off congressmen and senators, in order to get his laws passed. So yeah, you don't like it because it's not particularly esteemed for the head of state to be giving fellatio to members of Congress. But
maybe we got some twinks that are Senate staff.
If they're very passionate about their bills, if they're very passionate, then they should be willing to put their bills where their mouth is.
Sometime, Connor, I will tell you the story about how a lot of my job when I worked for the Republicans was got some spicy stuff to share. This is 20 years ago, but Republicans are a little freaky. Just to
I have heard from other conservatives that a shitload of the rich ones do cocaine and do a bunch of sneaky
cases. They're closet
cases. They do cocaine and they do sneaky sexy stuff on the down low, but you have to keep it on the hush hush or you're not viewed as a professional.
I know it's really hard to imagine rich people being degenerate. I'm sorry to shatter your illusions today.
It actually, you know what? It earnestly did hurt my feelings. By the way, it was Lauren Southern who told me this, that a lot of conservatives are degenerates behind the scenes. The reason why it hurt my feelings so bad is because if I was vested with power, time, attention, money in the interest of the population, I would actually take that because of my, hopefully my previous military service and previous law enforcement service would keep me honest. I would view that as hundreds of thousands of people entrusting me with their faith and confidence. And as a result, I would treat that with the utmost sincerity and reverence for what it represents. However, it seems like a lot of sociopathic personalities are attracted to and promoted into these positions of power, influence, and wealth. And they do just view it as kind of I deserve this. I was put in here to be kind of like a god king, like an aristocrat. And then they act like an aristocrat as a result.
I think that's well said. Why don't we call it there? I'll let you get to your Warhammer content. We should look at doing a second show during the week. This is always so much fun. I love doing this.
I had a blast as well. So if people at chat, people at home, If you are looking for the original content, this is Sebastian Gorka versus Destiny. You can see the title on the screen, Explosive Debate. It was hosted by Constantine from Trigonometry, I believe. And he won my approval and admiration through this debate. So it's good content. You should watch it on your own. Obviously, you know, we're kind of doing our thing and doing commentary on the side. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, but it is 2.5 hours. We kind of got to call it. If you do have donos, then you can donate to me, obviously. Patreon.com/counterpoints. You can donate to the show. We will be giving a majority of the proceeds to the editor because we're under a certain revenue threshold at this point. But the goal is obviously to grow the show. So if you enjoyed it, watch it, share it with a friend, comment on the VOD when it goes up, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have anything to say to our roughly 90 people cross-platform before we leave?
Thanks for tuning in. Connor and I feel really strongly that these kinds of conversations are really important to move forward as a country. And the fact that you're joining us at the beginning of this, it really means a lot to me. Thanks everybody for stopping in. And let me know if you're watching this so I can follow you back on Twitter.
Excellent. I'm actually going to play our intro song as our outro, and then we're going to end the stream. But parasocial love to you and yours. Have a fantastic night. Go watch your other favorite streamer.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.